Everyone, welcome to the Dr. Josh Axe Show. Today, I have an incredible guest I'm a huge fan of, Barbara O'Neill. She's been a legend in the space. You know, I got turned on to her during COVID. I started watching many of her videos online, and she does such an incredible job of taking complex health matters and making them simple. We're going to talk about female hormones, fertility, women's hormones, biblical health, and some maybe even controversial views we both have about conventional medicine and natural medicine. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Well, again, I'm a huge fan of you. When I told my mother-in-law, my mom, my wife, everybody I was coming on to, they were extremely excited because you've done such an amazing job of taking, I think, something that a lot of health topics that people maybe knew about quite a few years ago, they've sort of been lost. And one of those topics I want to dive into first is related to hormone health. Actually, before I do that, though, I would love to know a little bit about sort of your background of how you got into the natural medicine space.
Well, I'm a fifth generation Australian, Scottish descent. So I was brought up in your average Aussie home. Little bit of a Scottish there because I learnt Scottish dancing as a child, five kids. My father and my brother were inventors, and everything that came into the home, they pulled apart. They wanted to know how it worked. And I couldn't get my license till I'd learned how an engine works.
Yeah.
This was the environment I grew up in. We questioned everything except medicine.
Mm,
You never questioned medicine. And I never even thought about that until my first daughter had an earache, and 4 courses of antibiotics later, 6 weeks later, the earache comes back.
yeah.
Now I'm confronted, very confronted with this is not working. As the doctor writes the 5th course, I said, will my daughter be on this for the rest of her life? He was confronted with my question, and he should have been.
Yeah.
And he sent me to an ear, nose and throat specialist who looked in Emma's mouth, in her ears. He said, the child's teething. Give her these drops to keep the eustachian tubes clear.
Mm,
So when my next child had an earache, I did not go to the doctor. I did not tell anyone because you get pressure. They'll go deaf.
yeah.
You don't. I went to the old lady next door. So I must have been about 26. She's 86. I said, what did your mother do when you were a little girl? And had an earache. She said she steamed an onion on the stove. I ran home, steamed the onion, put it on his ear. He slept for 2 hours. I don't think he's ever had another earache.
Wow.
Now that changed my life. I thought there's something else. But to this day, I'm very thankful for that feeling. Not wanting to give my child any more drugs, not wanting to hurt my child, but not knowing what to do.
Mm.
And that really has spurned me on to educate, 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 to show the world, especially mothers, there's something else.
Yeah, you do such an amazing job. I'm especially thinking of your whiteboard videos where you sort of walk us through exactly how people can heal. And this is something, I think, doctors or health practitioners need to be teachers and educators. And this is something you do a great job of. And one of the areas I've seen you do a lot of education on is around women's hormones, fertility. I'd love to start there and diving into what women's hormones, because what happens today, most of the time women have an issue like hypothyroidism, PCOS, severe menopausal symptoms, and their doctor says, here's Synthroid,
Yeah,
here's hormone replacement
yeah.
therapy.
And two others that have become big are thyroid and osteoporosis
Yeah,
and depression. This is big. So I have the advantage of being the health director at our health retreat for 23 years. So a lot of women came through
yeah,
through our doors. And I would like to suggest that about 85% of women that came through the doors, whether they be 9, whether they be 90, are hormonal imbalance.
yeah,
So coming from my roots, I want to know why.
yeah,
Why? And I found out why. One of them is the contraceptive pill.
that's right.
It disrupts the hormones, and no one ever told women that it was a hormone disruptor.
There was a study that came out recently that said if women take the pill long term, birth control, their chance of getting hypothyroidism goes up by nearly 300%.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me. And breast cancer, and
Yeah,
polycystic ovarian syndrome, and fibroids, and endometriosis.
yeah,
There was basically endometriosis was virtually not until the pill was introduced. So
yeah,
it's not hard to link those figures together.
yeah,
Now, there are some women that have never been on the pill, neither their mother, So then we're looking elsewhere, and we've got environmental poisons. In the molecular structure of estrogen, there's a phenyl ring. And the plastic softening chemical that's in nearly every plastic bottle, that's in cars, in the dashboard,
Mm,
it's all got a phenyl in it. One's
mm,
bisphenol A, another one is nonylphenol.
yeah.
Also, growth stimulants in chickens. It's in the chicken, it's in
Yeah.
the egg, in cattle, and cleaning products people are using, chemical fabrics. So I've got woolen skirt, I have got woolen top. I love wool,
Yeah.
but the fabric that most women are wearing is nylon, acrylic, and polyester.
Mm,
And they are three fabrics that were created in a chemical laboratory.
yeah.
And our skin it breathes, it absorbs. So when
Hmm.
it's touching the skin, we're taking it in. Now, all of these areas I've just mentioned, little by little, like the dripping tap on a stone, are
Yeah.
disrupting that hormone balance. And our body runs according to precision balance.
Yeah.
So this disruption is causing all the problems we're seeing, which are some of them we just mentioned.
Now, what are some of the things like if you were working with a woman and she has, and you could hit on these all together or categorically, but these common conditions, hypothyroidism being one, PCOS, infertility, some of those issues. What are some of the things that you start to recommend women do to bring their hormones back into balance?
Now, you asked me, first of all, what was my journey? There was
Yeah.
another part of my journey is when I became a Christian.
Mm,
I became a Christian at the age of about 26, 27, and I discovered health from the Bible. And there's a verse in there, it's Psalm 104, verse 14, that God gave herbs for the
mm,
service of man. I love that verse,
wow.
the service. I'm here to serve you. Where would you like me? What would you have me do? Whereas drugs, they're like robots. Get out of my way.
That's
I
right.
got a
I'm
job
going to
to
force you
do.
to do something the body doesn't
I
want to
got a
do.
job to do whether you need it or not. So see a marked difference. The wild yam
Mm,
contains a plant chemical called diosgenin.
mm,
And when that wild yam is made into an oil-based cream, and that cream is applied to the skin, the fat cells take it up and it stimulates the biochemical pathway in the body that the body uses to make progesterone.
yeah. Wow.
Now, progesterone's mother hormone. So mother hormone overall. And unfortunately, what the pill does, it displaces progesterone and boosts up estrogen.
Yeah.
So the way to remedy that imbalance, which is estrogen dominant, progesterone deficiency, is reinstate mother. And
Mm,
that's what the yam cream does.
wow.
It stimulates the body to reinstate progesterone.
Wow.
And when you boost progesterone, it brings estrogen down, it rebalances testosterone, it brings everything back into balance.
You know, I was reading on this a little bit about yams and sweet potatoes and this amazing compound you're sharing. And obviously, I think eating those is fantastic. But as you're mentioning, the cream is going to be a little bit of higher dose, higher absorption. There are great benefits there. There's a paper that came out 2 months ago that said Japan now has 95,000 centurions. So think about almost 100,000 people over 100 years old. It's amazing. And hormone replacement there is virtually non-existent. But one of the top two, I think, sources of carbohydrates they consume are purple sweet potatoes. It's a big part of their diet, especially women going through menopause. And so I think one of those reasons might be that in boosting yin, boosting progesterone, as you're sharing. I absolutely love that. Well, what are your thoughts on? Is there anything in particular, herbs or uh, things that you like for women who are really struggling with hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's?
Well, there's an excellent book called Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without
Mm,
It by Dr. David Brownstein.
Brownstein, yeah,
Now, he is the thyroid expert in
Y-
the world,
yeah.
and he shows that under and overactive thyroid can both be due to iodine deficiency.
Yeah.
And they used to use iodine as a bread improver, but now they've replaced it with iodine competers,
Mm,
but also berries. Berries are sprayed with another chemical that's an iodine, it's like a bromide that's an iodine
yeah.
competitor. So we're exposed to so many things that are causing this disruption in the iodine. And another point is too, Mercury fillings, mercury has an affinity for selenium,
Mm,
and the thyroid needs selenium to convert iodine into thyroxine. So, can you see someone could be having berry smoothies every day and mer- mouthful of mercury fillings and be having thyroid problems, and
yeah,
their mother was on the pill. And not many people and not many even doctors know those threads that come together.
yeah,
So get the mercury out of the mouth, see a
yeah,
biological dentist, and if you're going to have berries, have organic. And if you're going to eat bread, make sure it's the ancient grains and it's not being grown with glyphosate, another chemical that can disrupt the
yeah,
hormones, and do an iodine test. So you put, say, Lugol solution, which has iodine and iodide, on the inside of your arm, and it'll make a brown smudge. We often do it at our health retreat. Ladies, let's all have a look
yeah.
at how long it stays. Now, if it's gone in an hour, your iodine levels are low. And if it's still got some semblance of colour 5 hours later, your iodine levels are good. So I like to empower people to be their own doctor. So here's a little test that you can do
Yeah,
for yourself. What if it's gone in an hour? We'll put it on every day till it stays for 5.
there you
So
go.
it can be as simple as that.
One thing I think we've lost the art of, I think there's been this idea, especially I know living in the United States, and it's probably true for most of the Western world, that we have to rely on someone else for our health.
Yeah,
Like you have to go to the doctor rather than caring for yourself and for your family. And I think that this is so important. This is one of the things I really respect about you is empowering moms and dads to learn about these things, practices at home. I had a functional medicine practice in Nashville, took care of a lot of kids. And ear infections is one of the most common things I see with this, where kids will get ear infections and then their doctor puts this fear in them that if they don't take an antibiotic, their kid could likely die. And the reality is that the statistics don't prove that. Your own body's
no,
creating heat and interferon to kill this virus. But parents are so fearful today, oftentimes, of sometimes even trying some of these remedies that I know I teach and you teach even
that's
more so.
that's true because I know with my daughter, they said she'll go deaf.
Yeah,
Well, she didn't go deaf. And I raised 5 more children and then married Michael 28 years ago with his 2. So we actually raised 8 children with no antibiotics, and I say to people, they're all still alive.
yeah,
The the
yeah.
the the body's been designed by God to heal itself,
That's right.
and it just needs the right conditions. Back to thyroid,
Yeah.
high estrogen opposes thyroid function.
Mm,
So very important part of getting the thyroid working again is taking or applying the wild yam cream.
yeah.
Dr. John Lee's probably the first physician that blew the whistle on this back in the 80s, 90s. He's passed now, but you can still see podcasts by him. And he said that when you eat the yam, your liver detoxifies almost 400%.
Mm,
And that's why the cream.
yeah.
So you can pick up so much more. And you mentioned earlier you can get a heavier dose,
Yeah.
a more effective dose by applying it to the skin. I think that's helpful to know.
I love it. It's so powerful. So some just takeaways. One, reducing the toxic exposure,
Oh,
staying away from
yes.
a lot of the plastic, silver things. I know my own mom, who she had a battle with cancer. And one of the things we did to help her heal, she had 12 silver fillings in her mouth, amalgams, had
Yeah.
them all removed. And she had dealt with chronic fatigue syndrome, hypothyroidism. And it was amazing. I mean, really, just even weeks after getting rid of those fillings, she felt a lift in her energy. I mean, there's a real,
Mm,
real difference. And a lot of these metals, they're blocking receptor sites for what you're talking about,
they are.
iodine, for selenium.
They
We're not
are.
even absorbing these things. And so I love that you're sharing that. I was watching a video of yours here just a little bit before we started the interview on you talking about the importance of the gut microbiome. Because it's not
Mm,
only, we heard this principle, we are what you eat, but
mm.
really, as you've said, you are what you absorb. Talk to us about how to get the gut microbiome healthy, some of your favorite plants for doing that, and why it's so important.
Well, you got to get the poisons out, and antibiotics slaughter gut flora. Chemotherapy slaughters the gut. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't realize that the statin drugs, the cholesterol lowering medication, and that's, of course, the pharmaceutical company's star child because they've made not millions, not trillions, but billions out of that medication. And yet that just slaughters gut flora. Long term painkiller use can also slaughter gut flora. So we've got to stop what's slaughtering it
Yes.
and we've got to reinstate the good stuff. When you consider that 70% of our immune system is established by our gut flora, we want that gut flora. The good news is there are some cultured foods that you can take, and that will help to boost it, like sauerkraut,
Mm,
kimchi, bok choy. That's often made also into a sauerkraut.
yeah,
Sauerkrauts are good. And miso is another one. Kefir, yogurts. You can
yeah.
get some nice plant-based yogurts now. They all help to restore gut flora. But what feeds gut flora is prebiotics, and prebiotic is fiber.
Yeah.
And the more variety in fiber you have, the more gut flora you're going to
Mm,
feed. For instance, you can have 10 different types of apples, and they will feed 10 different types of gut flora.
wow.
Isn't that
It is
incredible?
amazing. It's so amazing.
Yeah, so
I love that.
variety is the spice of life. Variety is the spice of life to our gut.
Yeah, that's right.
Variety in the vegetable kingdom.
That's right. I love that. It's so powerful. Yeah, I mean, the gut microbiome is something I've been very aware of with my career because there is so much. It's like 99% of the way I practice is not things I learned in school. And so when I started seeing patients. I was very surprised when I first started a functional medicine practice because then in school they don't tell you that every woman coming in is going to have hypothyroidism and every male is going to have low testosterone and every person almost is going to have leaky gut, some sort of gut issue, and it's so prevalent. And but I remember really focusing on, especially early in my career, healing the gut, and it helps so many conditions get well. One of the other things I've heard you talk about is certain natural plants and their benefits. As I was watching a video of you earlier, you were talking about the benefits of things like, I want to say, aloe and certain other herbals. Share with us some of your favorite herbals and plant-based medicines for helping heal the gut.
Well, when you open an aloe vera plant, it's slimy.
Yeah.
And if you look at the inside of your lip, it's slimy.
Hmm.
It's the same.
Yes,
But
exactly.
aloe vera contains a growth stimulant, and it
Mm,
stimulates rapid healing in the lining of the gut. Now, our gut cells are remade every 3 to 5 days. So, with gut problems, you can heal them quite quickly once the right condition is given.
that's
But
right.
you've got to remember that the gut has memory. So, you've got to change that around a bit. So, how do you take the aloe vera? Because it's actually not very nice to eat.
Yeah.
Some people will put it in a smoothie.
Yeah.
You could scrape the gel and mash it up and put it with a little apple juice
Yeah.
mainly. So it'll coat and soothe, great for a sore throat, great for ulcer in the stomach, great for irritable bowel, all the
Yeah.
way down. It's great for that.
Well, if you think about it like this, so like ulcers, for instance, it's essentially a burn. And of course,
Yeah.
aloe is great for burns on your skin,
Oh, it
but these
is.
burn, and people don't think about it like that. You got these burns, almost these canker like sores
Yeah.
throughout our digestive
Mm,
lining.
yeah.
Obviously, ulcerative colitis is a great example. That's some of these forms of
It's
IBD.
fantastic. In fact, we've seen people totally heal from irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, colitis, gastritis, you name it.
Yeah.
That they heal nicely. The other herb is cyprium.
Oh, yeah.
And cyprium is the powdered bark of the cyprium tree. And when you mix hot water with it, it goes like a soft jelly.
Yeah.
So again, nice and slimy for the
Yes. Yes.
for the lining of the gut. It also contains a growth stimulant. So I just love Psalm 104, verse 14. God gave herbs for the service of man. So these herbs come in, they coat, soothe, and help to heal the lining of the gut.
It's so powerful. I wrote this really short little ebook years ago, and it was called The King's Medicine Cabinet. And in the book, I kind of posed in the first, just again, this is a free ebook I just gave away online. And in the book, I said, if we would go back to the time of King David, King Solomon, Queen Esther, and we would have opened up their medicine cabinet, what would we have found in a biblical medicine cabinet thousands of years ago? What do you think we would have found in those biblical medicine
I'm
cabinets?
sure there'd be comfrey there.
Yes. Yeah.
Comfrey's the other plant that has a growth stimulant. You got to be careful where you put it, or it'll take over your garden because it's got a growth stimulant in it.
Wow.
And so I was in a Robert Louis Stevenson, a museum in one of the islands where he apparently lived for a while. And in the medicine cabinet, I saw comfrey.
Wow. Wow.
I
Amazing.
think there would have been comfrey. I think there would have been charcoal. Charcoal absorbs and neutralizes poisons. Even medicine use it now. Do you know they filter blood for dialysis? with charcoal.
Yeah,
And
that's
if someone
amazing.
has an overdose, they give them charcoal. It absorbs and neutralizes poisons. There's nothing else on the planet like charcoal. I'm sure there would have been charcoal there. And depending on where they lived, as to what herbs and what foods would have been available.
Yeah. Yeah. We read about the three wise men bringing, Jesus gold, but frankincense and myrrh, we know those were used for medicine.
Don't forget the frankincense and don't forget the myrrh.
That's right. Yeah, I'd actually read back many years ago during that time that when women were in labor post pregnancy, they gave myrrh to keep women from getting infection and for recovering
Mm.
faster. That was pretty amazing. I know a few other herbs that Solomon references are. Uh, he mentions sandalwoods, which is aloe. By the way, you just mentioned aloe. So people don't realize that aloe is in the Bible, but that's actually referenced as part of sandalwood. And then the other one is saffron. He actually mentioned saffron,
Mm.
which is all these benefits for mood and sleep. So I love that you're quoting Psalms 104 because um, the Bible to me is the greatest health book ever written.
It's the greatest medical book that has ever been written. And
Yeah,
you know what I found interesting? When I was a little girl in the Presbyterian church, because I was raised Scottish,
yeah,
you heard about Daniel in the lion's den. You heard about Daniel's three friends in the fiery
yeah.
furnace. Thrilling stories, but we never heard about Daniel chapter 1.
Mm,
And Daniel chapter 1 is when one young Daniel's about 16 taken captive, and they're going to be given the king's food and wine.
yeah,
And Daniel and his three friends said no.
yeah,
Now that's quite a stand for a 16-year-old boy to say, I'm not going to eat at the king's table. That he could have lost his head.
yeah,
But the Bible says that the prince had favor with Daniel.
mm,
And so he allowed him to go 10 days with just pulse, which is vegetables, and water to drink.
yeah.
And after 10 days, it said their faces were fairer and fatter than all the other young men. So they were allowed to just have water to drink and a plant-based diet for 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, the Bible says that the king tested them and they were 10 times smarter than all the wise men in Babylon. That was the known world at that time.
It's amazing.
And so that's a story I never heard of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. There are one of the, I recently was writing a book on a biblical diet, and one of the things it was so fun to do over the past couple years, and I've done this for quite a few years already, but really saying, okay, I'm going to write a book on it. So every time I read through the Bible, it was like I was using a microscope or a magnifying glass, looking for what are those quotes about health, and they are throughout the
Oh,
entire
there.
Bible. Like I started learning that 2/3 of Jesus' parables he taught were on farming and food. I
Yeah.
mean, his miracles, the fish, the loaves of bread. I mean, the Bible, communion in terms of what you're doing there.
And
There's such a
he spent more time healing than preaching.
That's right. It's amazing. It's so amazing. And so I appreciate so much how you appreciate the Bible. I've heard you talk about the Bible in those talks as well. So you talked about the Daniel, and sometimes we call that the Daniel fast today. What are some of the benefits of fasting? Is that something that you ever recommend for anyone you're working with or for overall health?
Well, at our health retreat in Australia, Misty Mountain Health Retreat, guests come in for either 1 week or 2 weeks. They come in on a Sunday, we give them a beautiful meal, and then in the afternoon they have a steam sauna and we just serve them a thin soup at night. And then Monday, Tuesday are juicing days. And every 2 hours we serve a fresh vegetable,
Yeah.
light fruit juice. So they first 2 days are fasting days. And they steam sauna at the end of every day because that stimulates their skin to throw off more waste.
Yeah.
And we find that it's very effective because the stomach is very happy when it gets a little rest.
Yes.
And we say to our guests, you couldn't eat in a day what we put in your juices. So what we do is we nutritionally support the body, we nutritionally support the liver to effectively detoxify them. Because when you're not eating solid food, it takes about 1,200 calories to digest a meal. So when you're not digesting the meal, then the body's looking around for something to do. So it'll
Mhm.
go to the parts of the body with the greatest need. And that's the theory as to why it's been used for centuries to help people heal.
It's amazing. So my mom had cancer. When she was 41, she had breast cancer. And then about 18 years later, she was diagnosed with cancer again on her lung. And that second time, first time we went all conventional, second time we did all natural. And the diet you're describing is very similar to what my mom followed to reverse cancer. She did basically broth, lots of steamed vegetables, juice vegetables, some berries, and wild salmon. I mean, that was her
Mm,
whole diet, and was able to
mm. Yeah,
reverse cancer that way. But it's you know, there's this the Bible and a lot of world religions talk a lot about fasting, obviously for spiritual breakthrough, but for the health breakthroughs, there's so much scientific literature and just historical evidence on the benefits there.
that's right. It's been used for centuries
Yeah,
for to help stimulate healing in the body, and that's why it works. The body doesn't have to digest now. Let's do something else. Let's
yeah,
go to areas that need help.
yeah. It can repair, it can regenerate. Now, I want to
It
mention
can.
this. You mentioned statin drugs earlier. We often call the gut the second brain. So most people know this. Statin drugs cause your brain is made up of about 25% cholesterol. It's a lot of fat. So when you're doing these statin drugs, you are demyelinating, you are destroying your entire nervous system.
You
Well,
are.
a big part of your nervous system is in your gut. So that's another thing with these statin drugs are destroying the body in such a
Yeah,
massive, and there's not a single drug that doesn't cause a depletion in the body of a vitamin or nutrient. And they don't even put those side effects on the labels.
that's true. That's true. You see, drugs never cure disease.
Mm-mm.
And some might say, well, Barbara, can you really say never? You can
Yeah,
say never because they only mask symptoms. It's the body, and the body alone is the only thing that has the capacity to heal.
mm,
Now,
that's right.
water treatments work with the body. Herbs work with the body, but it's the body that does the healing. But it will heal when you give it the right conditions. And unfortunately, the drugs, they don't work with the body.
That's
They
right.
mask the symptoms. And so the people think, oh, this is helping because I don't have a headache anymore. I don't have a bad rash anymore. But they don't realize they've just pushed it further in the body. It's going to come out again.
That's right. Yeah, I think one thing people don't realize, to your point, is that drugs essentially are forcing your body to do actually something it doesn't want to do. It's
That's right.
forcing it. Vitamins, minerals, herbals are changing your environment. Vitamins and minerals are giving your body just the tools it needs to heal
That's
itself.
right.
Yeah, I was really blessed to learn this principle. Food doesn't actually heal you. Broccoli, turmeric, none of it heals you. Your body heals
That's
itself.
right.
Change the environment. And you did such a great job of teaching that. I want to right before we started, you shared something with me, which I just loved, and I want to get into this. You delivered one of your own babies yourself.
Yes.
Okay, that's amazing. We did. I with my wife Chelsea. We did two at-home births in a tub. The most amazing spiritual experience of
It
our
is.
lives.
It is.
Talk to me about fertility, birth, home births, and your experience there, and also delivering your own baby at home.
Well, it is it's challenges me that what they've done with birthing today.
Mm,
So I read a book called The Midwife of Auschwitz. She's a Polish woman in her 50s in Auschwitz. She delivered 3,000 babies in 2 years, didn't lose a baby.
wow.
Now let's look at that. These women are in the most terrible conditions. They're malnourished, spiritually, emotionally, mentally traumatized. She
Yeah.
never lost a baby. So, you know what I say? What's happening in our hospitals?
Hmm.
What's happening that we've got such a high death rate in our hospitals? It's intervention.
Yeah.
So, my babies, I had several babies at home, and it was such an incredible experience. You've experienced it
So
yourself.
amazing.
There's nothing like it. So, with my fifth child, they they checked me and they said, "You've got a while to go." So I decided to start marching around the room. And 7 minutes later, I had another contraction and I could feel pushing the back of my throat, to push. And I thought, what's going on? And I felt down and I could feel the head. And so I started panting because my baby's just come too fast. I knew that from my home births. No one was in the room except my husband, and I'm panting, and he's tapping me saying, "You shouldn't be panting yet." And I couldn't tell him. And you know
Yeah.
what? I was confronted with the fact I got to do this myself.
Yeah. Wow.
So what I did is, as I panted, the head would go back. As I didn't pant, the head would push. So I just panted, massaged like I'd seen the midwives do it, and the head fell into my hand.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And I said, "The head." And he jot round and, "Oh, I'm sitting there with a head. And then a nurse's aide with a mop and bucket came into the room, saw me sitting there with the head. The mop and bucket went flying. She went running.
That's so
People
great.
came from everywhere. It was a tiny little country hospital because I went into labour early. So I went into there. My midwife's in Sydney. And they came into the room. They looked at me with their head, and they said, can we check if the cord's around the neck? And I said, yes. They checked, you're fine. And then I got my next contraction, and she went to take the baby, and I said, I'll take the baby
Yeah.
because the head's the
Amazing. You already
hardest.
had it. Yeah.
And that baby, the head just goes, the rest of the body goes, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I just pulled that baby up, and I thought, praise be to God. Why
Mhm.
don't let women do this? But I think women are fearful.
Yeah.
They're so fearful. It's time to know your body, to work with your body, to know that your body can do it.
I think so much of it comes with this thing where we've sort of made the medical system and doctors, they've sort of replaced God in a way in the minds of a lot of people. I think for a lot of people, they have this, the Bible says in the Psalms, you are fearfully and wonderfully made.
That's right.
And I think a lot of people have sort of lost that idea that science or this idea of science is sort of again replaces God, and it constantly is violating
It,
God's design.
it is. You will love Psalm 146, verse 3. It says, put not your trust in princes,
Mm,
neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. So who are the princes? They're the authorities in the field, the
yeah,
authorities in government, the authorities in medicine, the authorities in nutrition. What does the Bible say? Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there's no help. His breath goes forth, he returns unto his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish. In other words, he's just a man. But verse 5 says, happy is he that has the God of Jacob as his help, whose hope is in the Lord his God, that made heaven, earth, sea, and all that in them is, that's us, and keeps truth forever.
it's amazing.
Isn't that a beautiful verse? So
Beautiful.
it's actually a challenge to us people. Stop putting so much faith and trust in the doctor. It doesn't mean you don't go. You don't go. Doesn't mean you don't go anywhere near them. You might
Yeah,
go and you might
sure.
get their advice, but you know what you say? Thank you so much for your opinion.
Yeah,
Because actually, that's what it is. You're gracious. The Bible says in Colossians 4, verse 6, let your speech be always with grace,
yeah,
seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. You say, thank you so much for your advice. I'll seriously consider this. And you leave. And
yeah.
you do consider it. Because 2 Timothy 1, verse 7, the Bible says that God has not given us the spirit of fear,
Hmm.
but of power.
That's
What's
right.
power? Knowledge.
Yeah,
But of power, love, and a sound mind. And a sound mind weighs up the pros and cons. But if a person's been told, you've got cancer, you've got to do this immediately, that's shocking news.
that's right.
Please have the courage to say, thank you so much for your opinion. I'll get back to you. And you leave.
We've got into, and I've seen this so often, it sort of shocks me. There are statistics around once 5 o'clock rolls around, the amount of C-sections that happen go up dramatically. The amount of C-sections now that are being scheduled months out is crazy. I've had doctors, not happened once, I've heard this 10 times, where women have told me, well, the doctor told me that I have a small body and that my hips are too small,
No.
so I have to have a C-section before they even try. I mean, that's
Look how
yeah.
tiny I am. I gave birth to a 10-pound baby.
Yeah, wow.
You
Yeah.
see, and that's where squatting's great for women. It just, it
Let's use
prepares that.
yeah, exactly. Let's use gravity,
Let's
not
use
fighting against
gravity.
gravity.
And I tell you something I've been told far too many times, and this was told me just a few days ago. Had a scan, the doctor said there's water around half the baby's heart. Had another scan a month
Mm.
later, now there's water around both the hearts. Have to go in immediately and have and give birth to the baby, and the woman's 35 weeks. Oh, have to do a C-section. Then they scan the heart after the birth. They don't see very much at all.
Yeah.
So a lady emailed me, she said, Barbara, I've just had a scan, I'm 35 weeks, they say that my baby's too small, the placenta's breaking down. I said, I believe it. Now, when I say that, that challenges many people. I said, you know what a scan is? It's just sound waves coming back. I said, it could be wrong. If I were you, I would not go back. I would enjoy your last few weeks of labor. You feel good? Yeah. Baby's moving? Yeah.
Yeah.
She went into labor at about 39 weeks, gave birth naturally. Baby was perfect. Placenta was perfect.
Mm.
Yeah. So I'm almost at the stage where I say to women, I can't tell you what to do, but if I was you, I would not have scans.
Yeah.
Because what it does, it puts fear into the woman.
That's right.
And then a scan later, oh, actually, we can't see it this time. Yeah. That mother needs peace, calm, and happiness through her pregnancy.
Yeah, it's so important. Well, one of the things that I tell the patients I work with that are dealing with infertility, I tell the women, I said, here's the state we need to get you into. Because I think a lot of infertility can be driven through unhealthy emotions, not feeling safe and secure. And I tell them, I said, this is how I want you to feel. I want you to think about your favorite couch. You're bundled up with a blanket. You've got your favorite, you know, beverage. Maybe it's a cup of hot cocoa or a coffee. You got your family there, Christmas tree fire, and you feel safe, secure, warm. I'm like, that's the emotional state we need to get you into. But what you're saying is like the medical system today, rather than doing that, it's stripping away hope. It's putting in fear. We know that that causes the body to sort of lock and tighten up. And I see that, I think, a lot of times sort of interfering with that whole birthing process
And a
as
woman
well.
goes home, she's just been told they think they see something in the baby's kidney. She goes home, she's crying all the way home.
Yeah.
They say, we'll scan again in a month. What's that next month like for her?
Mhm.
So if they contact me, you know what I say? I don't believe them.
That's right.
And I said, and even if there's something there, what are they going to do?
Yeah,
Huh?
there's no interventions that they have that
No,
that work. Yeah.
no. And sometimes they get it wrong.
Do you have unexplainable illness, hormone dysfunction, weight loss resistance, brain fog, and you're tired of being dismissed when you know something isn't right? Well, get my at-home testing of targeted biomarkers, including hormones, thyroid, and metabolism, plus a full hour with one of my senior health advisors to help you understand your results. The truth is, your doctor's probably reading your blood work all wrong. They're missing the cellular issues behind the symptoms. This new testing flips the script. The future of interpreting test results is here. I'm currently offering a simple at-home blood test that actually tests for the right things. And just as importantly, it comes with proper interpretation of your results. If you want to check it out and grab one before they're gone, just go to mybloodwork.com now.
We've talked about women's hormones. We've talked about, and I do want to say, just for everybody, if you have not done a home birth, if you are at the age where you could do it in the future, it is the most incredible experience, supernatural, amazing thing. So definitely consider it. You don't have to deliver your own baby. We'll leave that up to Barbara. but getting a good midwife is amazing. Like we had a midwife we worked with. She's done well over 1,000 births. And woman in her 60s now, and she's just absolutely amazing. Had the best experience, and my wife doesn't. She never wants to bother anybody. So like we almost had to deliver the baby because I'm looking at her contraction. I'm like, "Are you keeping track of time anymore?" She's like, "Well, no, I lost track." And then 30 minutes later, the baby was here. So, anyways, but having a great midwife's amazing. We talked about women's hormones. I want to talk about men's hormones as well. We are seeing now more than ever before male testosterone just plummeting. I want to say over the last 50 years, male testosterone has dropped by 33%. In some areas of the country, if you're comparing, it's over 50%. And so we're seeing men now contributing to a lot of the infertility issues.
That's true.
What do you think the root cause of that is? And what are some things
Well,
men can start to do?
I think it's the same root cause as with women.
Mm,
Mother hormone's been displaced. And I think it's really nice to picture it like this. Mother hormone, progesterone, she's very protective of her son, testosterone.
mm,
So when mother hormone is where she should be, she plays a protective role on testosterone, keeping it in the balance that it should be.
mm.
And so all those environmental poisons we talked about, if his mother was on the pill before she gave birth to him, there's a factor coming through there. Another factor too, not often talked about, is laptops on the lap.
Mm.
So I say protect the family jewels. Men and women, don't put your laptop
Yeah.
on your
Or
lap.
phones in your pocket,
Oh
right
yes,
there
yeah.
too.
So there, and it's not the odd day it happens. It's day after day after day after day. So these are all contributing factors, but it's actually the same as with women. We've got to reinstate mother hormone, and that's where the wild yam cream, it does that. So
That's so
whether
good.
man or woman, they can apply that yam cream. But we had a man come with prostate cancer.
Yeah.
He was having a 3-monthly injection to try and get his testosterone levels right. He'd developed breasts. He was getting hot flushes.
Wow.
So at
Yeah.
our retreat, he learnt about the yam cream. And he made the decision not to go and have that 3-monthly injection anymore. He made the decision to start applying that yam cream twice a day. Men don't have a break like women because they're not cyclic.
Yeah.
Women apply it twice a day, 3 weeks a month. Men apply it every day, twice a day. He stopped his nightly red wine, stopped his coffee, started to go more plant-based, exercise, so all of the basic laws of health. We got an email 10 months later. Breasts have gone down, hot flashes have stopped, testosterone levels are the best they've been for years.
That's so great. I love hearing that. I actually had not heard that before. What my in my training and looking at Chinese medicine and some other things, what we would tend to do is go more directly at testosterone. And so I would do Panax ginseng, fenugreek, more weightlifting. I mean, some of those things. But I liked your point, and this is something I really appreciate about you is we want to always go to the root of all roots.
Yeah.
I see cortisol being another hormone that's the root of all roots. It's like, to your point, cortisol goes up, insulin goes up.
Yeah.
Now estrogen can't be detoxified by the liver when that happens. So then T4 can't be converted to T3. So this
Yes.
whole hormonal
All-
pathway, but
all of that.
that's great wisdom, and that's something I'm going to start using more frequently in testing with patients, is doing more of
Yeah.
the progesterone increasing in men, because I've done it in women a lot,
Yes,
but not as
yes.
frequently with
Oh,
men.
yeah. In fact, great for prostate, great for low sperm count, but also penile dysfunction.
Hmm.
And I don't know how else to say this, but one man said to me, "This cream just puts lead in my pencil." He said, "I'm
That's
not
true.
performing like I was when I was 20, but I'm
Yeah.
better than I was." So
Yeah.
in all of those areas, the yam cream can, yes, definitely help men. And Cheryl Selman, in her book Hormone Heresy, she explains it like this. She said, "Men are like the sun. They rise every morning, conquer the day, go down every night. But women are like the moon. Sometimes they're full, sometimes they're half, sometimes they're a slither." So women are more cyclic, so they have 1 week a
It-
month off.
It isn't amazing how I mean what you just said there. I think God teaches us with nature. Like,
He
I mean,
does.
literally, the sun is like a male cycle. The moon is a woman's cycle. Every 28, 30 day. I mean, that exact same cycle. It's amazing. I've always appreciated one of the things that I've taught, and I think I've heard you talk about this as well, is this, you can often know how to heal an organ by or what foods to eat for the organ based on the appearance of the organ, right? Like a walnut looks like a hemisphere of the brain. Tomatoes have 4 chambers and they're red. So does your heart. Beets look like blood. And so
And
I think it's
celery, like the femur.
your bones, right? Exactly. It's amazing for, keeping you from losing minerals. So I if there's one thing that I really would love people to walk away with, is that I want them to understand that God is for you, not against you. You're fearfully and wonderfully made, and that there are all of these things in nature that are so powerful. I did want to ask you about hormone replacement therapy and your views on that.
My views on that are I'm not in agreement with it, because I'm not in agreement with using synthetic hormones. So if a woman is on hormone replacement therapy, and I have to tell you, I have had several women testify that 6 years after being on hormone replacement therapy, they developed breast cancer.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So yes, you've seen it yourself. So I'm not in agreement with it, because it further disrupts the hormones. So if a woman's on hormone replacement therapy, my suggestion is, well, what I would do, I would stop, but the day I stop, I would start applying the yam cream.
Yeah.
So we have a yam cream that we sell here in the UK. My daughters make it in Tasmania. It's called Trelune.
Mm.
So it's about 3, tre meaning 3, lune, the lunar cycle. And I remember when my husband saw that, he said, "Oh, this is a terrible name. It needs to be Ruth's yam cream or Mary's yam cream." But my
Barbara's
daughter,
yam cream, of course.
my daughters say, "No, Trelune,"
That's
and
great.
referring to the lunar cycle. So men or women do very well with it. One lady said, it didn't work. I said, "How long did you try it for?" She said, 2 months. I said, "Well, this is what's happening after 2 months. This is estrogen, which should be down there. Here's progesterone that should be up there. And after 2 months, we're about here.
Yeah.
What we want the mother hormone back. How long will it take? Well, we've got a saying in Australian, how long's a piece of string? It could be an
Yeah.
inch long or it could be
Mile long.
mile long.
Yeah.
So it depends on, and I've seen 3 generations of women with it out. Now, it's not going to take 3 generations to get back. In fact, it's not going to take 20 years to get back, but it might take a year.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and this is where time, and the Bible has a beautiful section in Hebrews on time. It's Hebrews 10:35. It says, "Cast not away, therefore, thy confidence, in the which is great recompense of reward, for ye have need of patience,
Yeah.
in that after you have done the will of God, you might receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he that shall come, or will come, he shall come. But the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them that draw back unto perdition, but of them that believing in the saving of the soul." Now I add something to that, "but to them that believing in the saving or the healing of the body." So don't cast your confidence away. Have confidence in God, confidence in this body that he gave us. But ye have need of patience.
You know, a lot of these sort of ancient sages would always say that the partner of wisdom, the greatest partner, is patience. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
it's part of being wise. It's part of doing the right
That's
thing. Is
right.
have,
Yeah, we don't get sick overnight and we don't heal overnight. And
yeah,
that's another problem with medicine today, quick fixes.
that's right. And that's what we're trained to be. And social media's made it worse. Everything else we order food. I mean, everything we want to see
Now,
instantly, but it's typically not the best way. You know, I was
no.
reading Proverbs here this last week, and the one really struck me. It basically said this: wealth that comes quickly will not last.
Yeah.
Wealth that comes built over time will last.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. You know, one of the things I have studied and understood in what you're sharing with hormone replacement therapy, and this is the ancient Asian view, but is that when you start taking synthetic hormones from the outside in, your body starts turning off its own tap. So it
Yes.
stops producing progesterone, stops
Yes.
producing estrogen itself. And then
Yes.
in Chinese medicine, they would call that a qi deficiency in a certain organ. So now you have lack of blood flow, lack of movement in that area, because now your body, think about your body as like it's got a spring inside of it. You're turning your own natural spring off versus what you teach is, no, listen, we're gonna open that spring up so water is just flooding out. In your points with doing the yam cream and some of these other therapies, I think is we want to work with the body, not against the body. I see men now getting on testosterone therapy in their 20s and 30s, and then some of them saying, "Well, I want to have a family one day," and I'm sitting there thinking, "You're increasing your rate of infertility dramatically."
Dramatically.
Yeah, and so I love what you're teaching. I think so often people um, are running to hormone replacement therapy rather than doing all the right things. It's like if you follow
Yeah,
the right diet and do these ancient remedies you've talked about, I found that 99% of the time people heal, people get well.
they do. And there's always a consequence.
That's right.
That's Newton's third law of motion. To every action, there's an equal and an opposite reaction. And Proverbs 26:2, it says, "The curse causeless shall not come."
Yeah.
So there's always a cause. And the cause, see, I've got I think there, a dent in my cheek. You know what that dent's from? I crashed on my bicycle on the bridge. Real easy. Cause of dent, crash.
Yeah.
But it's not usually that easy.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and that happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this has been happening for a while. And it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. A piece of straw cannot break a camel's back, but on top of everything else, it can tip the scales.
That's right.
And that's what often you see. And because the person's suddenly gone down, they want to suddenly get better, but they don't realize that It's actually all of those things that have been happening for many years that have contributed to this.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of these mistakes we can make. I mean, you've talked about plastic bottles, bisphenol A, the glyphosate, a lot of these things that add up. What do you think are maybe 3 or so of the biggest mistakes people are making that they're just totally unaware of that's really harming their health?
I think a really big mistake is thinking that coffee and tea are hydrating them.
Mm.
So every morning when we go to the hotel to have breakfast, they say, "Will you have tea or coffee?" No. They look at you as if you're strange. And they put our cup upside down. Because I would say we are probably the only ones there not having tea or coffee.
Yeah.
Well, what will you have to drink? Well, we've already drank a lot of water. So that misconception that tea and coffee are hydrating, they're actually dehydrating you. If you are dehydrated and you drink a cup of coffee, you'll be more dehydrated after that, because coffee has caffeine, which is a dehydrator. You put sugar in that, another dehydrator. You drink tea, not as much caffeine, but it's got tannin, another dehydrator.
Wow.
So that's a real misconception.
Yeah.
Another misconception is exercise is for children.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
We should never stop.
Yeah.
Never stop. Stagnant pools breed disease, and stagnant bodies, that's a big disease.
Yeah.
Producer is the body's just not moving. We need to move every day. Muscle knows no age.
Yeah.
Whether you're 9 or 90, you can have strong muscles. So that's another misconception.
Mm.
And the other misconception is it doesn't matter if you don't go to bed till midnight.
This is a good one. I like this one.
And when you understand what happens in your brain at night, as a British neurologist named Dr. Matthew Walker, he wrote a book, Why We Sleep. And at the end of it, he said, I did not like what I found because I was hoping the research would show 6 hours is all right. No, 8. Must be 8.
That's right.
And also catching at least 2 hours before midnight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so powerful. And I remember hearing at a lecture when I was younger, somebody say it was a practitioner, every hour before midnight is worth almost double. And I
Fun.
thought, and at first I thought, is that right? And then through trial and error and realizing, I'm like, absolutely, that's absolutely true. I'm really blessed right now. I have a 1.5-year-old and a 5-year-old. And my 5-year-old, my wife puts the 1.5-year-old to bed. I put the 5-year-old to bed. But I'm going to bed at like 8:30 now, which I feel so refreshed every single morning going to bed just after 8. But yeah, it's I absolutely agree. I mean, I think there was a study that came out recently that said, on average, women are getting a little less, like 40 minutes less of sleep a night compared to 50, 60 years ago. And men, it's like 30 minutes less.
Oh.
But what people don't realize is, I mean, think 40 minutes of less sleep.
And
what-
when
yeah.
you realize the difference between before midnight and after midnight, if they're losing before midnight, that you double that.
Yeah, that's exactly
Mm.
right. It's exactly right. So it's it's such an important part of us regenerating when we sleep.
It
And so
is.
it's
It is.
agreed,
And
yeah.
if we don't get regenerated every night, we're going to age very quickly.
That's right. It's so right. As I mentioned earlier, you talk a lot about food as medicine. You talk a lot about herbs as medicine. Let's start with food here. What are some of your favorite foods that people can start eating that act as a form of medicine for the body?
Well, I know people often say to me, what are we going to feed you? I said, just feed me greens and beans. I love greens and beans. And a lot of people get put off the beans because they say they give the wind. Well, are they soaked? Are they very well rinsed?
That's
Are
right.
they prepared properly? And if they still give wind, we've got to start real slow and slowly build the microorganisms up in our gut for that particular legume.
Can I tell you that there is a video online recently of, I want to say it was an Italian family, and they said for every meal, this is it was very extreme, but I want to say all 3 of them were over 100 years old, and they all ate 3 bean soup for every meal. So it was so you can live to be over,
the-
that was like their
The
main
beans.
staple.
And you see, the beans are actually quite low in carbohydrates
Mm.
compared to grain.
Very high fiber.
They're
That's a good
high
point.
fiber, they're great
Protein,
proteins,
yeah,
and the greens, the greens, the greens. The
yeah,
greens are incredibly high in minerals, and our bones are made of minerals. We need minerals.
yeah.
Now, when you cook them, you don't lose the minerals
Mm.
because the minerals are, heat doesn't destroy
It doesn't
them.
affect metal like that, right?
No,
That's
no.
right. There are now there's just kind of this movement that's happened. I literally just had this question, so I just
Yeah.
got done speaking here, and right afterwards, somebody came up to me. They said, "Hey, what do you think about lectins? What do you think about eating vegetables?" Because I've heard now, I mean, it's so crazy. Can I just say, like, somebody was like, "I heard that you shouldn't eat vegetables
Yeah.
because they're not healthy," and I'm like.
Well,
There's like thousands of years of like Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, the
absolutely.
Bible saying that's just not true. But
It's a test of time. I've got a funny story about this.
yeah,
It was probably about 2 years ago. Oh, no, it was 2022 when I came back into Australia. I was put into quarantine for 2 weeks. And someone gave me a book just before I got on the plane, The Plant Paradox by Dr.
the-
Stephen
yeah.
Gundry.
And I do want to say, I know
And
Stephen, he's a really nice guy. I
and
disagree with him on quite a bit,
and
but
you know what was interesting? I started to read it and he's saying the tongue took 10 million years to develop and
yeah,
I just kept closing the book thinking, I don't want to be bothered with this. But you know what? I'm in a room for 2 weeks.
yeah,
Can't get out. So
yeah.
I kept going back to the book. I'm so glad I read it because I wanted to know, well, what are lectins and why did God put them in food?
Protection for the
Now,
plant.
you'll find lectins high in unripe fruit.
Mm.
And of course, the birds don't eat the unripe
Oh,
fruit.
they're prebiotics then.
They only
Yeah.
eat the ripe fruit. So when you get the ripe pear or the ripe fig,
Yeah.
there's no lectins.
Mm.
So I thought, well, that makes sense. There's a bitterness before they ripen, and that stops the birds. That
Mm.
makes sense. And then, well, it's in legumes. But if you soak them and you rinse them several times and cook them well, especially in a pressure cooker, disarms the lectins.
That's right.
Or what about grain? Yes, there's lectins in grains, but if they're made into the sourdough method, the sourdough or the culturing process disarms the lectins. So I thought, well, all we have to do is cook them properly and
Yeah.
prepare them properly.
I mean, this is such a problem today because I've seen so many people run with these ideas of
Yeah.
grains are bad.
Yeah.
Grains are. It's interesting. Like in writing the Biblio Diet on the biblical diet, the most referenced foods in the Bible are, I mean, sourdough bread is very, very high up there.
Oh,
Red
yes.
meat is actually very high as part of Solomon's provisions. Vegetables, pomegranates are the most referenced fruit along with figs and grapes. And so, I mean, these are all things that are salt, honey is, are referenced,
Yes.
olive oil,
Yeah.
referenced so many times. But,
Oh,
but
olive oil, huge.
yeah,
A man, he was a Christian and was at church one day, and he said, "You're wrong on the oils. We shouldn't be eating it." I said, "You need to do a Bible study on olive oil."
that's right. In fact, I mean, I would almost say one thing on almost everybody can agree on, both vegan and carnivore and whatever. Almost everybody agrees that olive oil
Oh,
is the
yeah.
best oil.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It's very important. Something else very interesting about lectins, if you've got good gut flora, disarms the lectins.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, we don't need to throw vegetables out. We just need to ensure good gut flora and to prepare our food properly. Like Sally Fallon in her book, Nourishing Traditions,
Yeah.
she explores all the traditional ways, the long, slow cooking on the wood stove, the rinsing well, the sourdough culturing of the grains.
Yeah.
If you prepare your food properly, no problem with lectins.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the foods that are the most different today compared to if we're talking about just historically, generally the time of Jesus or even 200 years ago, bread and dairy are the most radically different today. I mean, bread today is like white goop that
Oh,
turns
yeah.
into sugar versus then even the way they would harvest it when it ripe, they would soak it and let it sit in the sun. They would then mill it themselves. And it was an ancient grain like an einkorn, and then they would ferment it. Like there was this great study on celiac disease. So these are people that are severely intolerant to gluten. But if they did a fermentation sourdough process in the study, of the 17 people, they did another one with about the same amount of people, 0% of them had any reaction whatever to gluten. Because your point, it breaks down the lectin and the phytic acid.
That's what it does. It actually totally breaks it down.
Yeah. So you talked about beans and greens. That's another one. Again, it's got a bad rep. I mean, steamed spinach and kale, bok choy, broccoli. Right? I mean, these are amazing, amazing healing foods. I have someone I know who had MS, and she completely reversed MS by eating only meat, high fat, and then greens. I mean, and her biggest thing was just steam green vegetables. I'm curious, what are some of the most miraculous healings you've seen? And what were some of the foods or things people did in order to see these miraculous healings in their body?
Where do I start?
Wherever you'd like, wherever you'd like.
Well, I think one of the most remarkable stories, because people come to our retreat, then they go home, and we don't often hear back.
Yeah.
But this lady, Elizabeth Cott, she had 3 tumors in her abdominal area. They wanted to start chemo straight away. She didn't like the look of the side effects. She came to our retreat. And as I'm consulting with her, I discovered she's a high sugar eater. You see, cancer cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. She never drank, she never smoked, she was a Christian. So people would say, well, how come she got cancer? But she ate a lot of sugar.
Mm.
She said, we're Polish, we love our desserts. In fact, in one cake about this big, she put 16 cups of white sugar.
Oh my goodness.
And her house was spotless, but she used chemical cleaners, chemical cleaners on everything. So she was also being poisoned by the chemicals. So anyway, we implemented the program. She went on no fruit at all for 6 weeks. And what that does is that it's designed to give a sledgehammer effect to cancer cells because they consume so much glucose.
Yeah.
We also hyperbaric chamber. She also was taking herbs to help knock off the cancer. Went back to the doctor. I think it was 6 months since she first been, and he said, "Oh, just keep doing what you're doing," because all her cancer levels had come down.
Wow.
All the inflammatory markers had come down. Went back, so it was a year later, the next visit. First tumor's gone.
Mm. Wow.
Another year later, another tumor gone. She said to me, I'm in my 70s now. I feel better now than when I felt in my 40s.
Yeah.
Just an incredible story. And also another story of a guy who was type 1 diabetic, 62. He was on medication for all heart, sugars, 90 units of insulin a day. The doctors had basically said, we can do no more for you. He came to our retreat. He said, I spent $1 million on my health in the last 10 years. Best specialists in the land. And
Yeah.
they've just sent him home to say, we can do no more for you. Came to our retreat. He said, anything you say, I will do. And he did.
Wow.
So implemented exercise, got the high glycemic foods right down, low carbohydrate, high fiber, great proteins, good fats. 2 weeks, and he was from 90 units of insulin a day down to 10 units of insulin.
Wow. That's
He
amazing.
emailed me 3 months later. He said, I'm off all my medication.
Wow.
He said, now, type 1 diabetic. And we're told that can never be.
Yeah.
So he was incredible because he did it.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the key. He did it.
Yeah.
The Bible says, be ye doers of the word,
That's
not
right.
hearers only.
That's so good. That's so good. I love that so much. We've talked about food as medicine. Again, greens, beans, those are some things you've talked about that people can really thrive on. It sounds like you talked about broth and some other things in your retreat. I want to ask you about plant-based medicine and herbals. This is something that I didn't learn about at all in school, but through self-study of years and years and years, I have become such a big fan of herbal medicine.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite herbs that you recommend most commonly for various imbalances and conditions?
Well, you mentioned the gut.
Yeah.
And certainly the slippery elm, we advocate that for any diarrhea. So irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, colitis, ulcerative colitis, all of that helps an enormous amount. But I also look at boosting hydrochloric acid.
Mm.
In fact, in my book, Self-Healed by Design, I've got a chapter, it's called Hydrochloric Acid, the Stomach's Secret.
Wow. Yeah.
Because hydrochloric acid is so important. It not only plays an important part in breaking our protein down. So it's one thing to eat protein, it's another thing to break it down. So low hydrochloric acid can be responsible for not breaking down the protein properly. Plus, it's also antibacterial, antifungal, antimicrobial. So I look at boosting that, and we've got a great herbal mix. It's got gentian and ginger
Yeah.
and dandelion and golden seal. Just a little golden seal.
Wow.
Golden seal is one of my favorite herbs. It's called king of tonics to all mucous
I
membranes.
love that.
So you can sniff it for sinus. You can rinse your mouth with it. It'll help a stomach ulcer. It'll help to heal irritable bowel. So we put all those bitter herbs in and make a tea out of it. We gently simmer it. And all the guests that come to Misty Mountain, they get a little cup of that hot just before each meal, because I find everyone can do with a boost to their hydrochloric acid.
Well, that's so good. I had a patient come in recently. I was working with him, and he came in, and his vitamin D levels were incredibly low on his blood work, and he was supplementing with vitamin D, lots of it, and he still wasn't getting it. And part of the problem is that he wasn't absorbing it because of bile, right? His liver, his gallbladder weren't producing enough bile, and that's another thing people don't know about these bitters is the
Uh,
importance of it
And this
helping liver and gallbladder.
fat-free diet that,
It's the worst.
the worst in the world, the poor old liver and gallbladder, they weren't doing anything
Yeah.
because there's no fat to
What?
make any bile
Well, I
for.
know in the Western world, all the emphasis, like most everybody, is sweet and salty, right? But
Yeah,
it's bitter and sour that have most of these medicinal benefits.
they do. And there's the old saying, bitter to the mouth, sweet to the stomach,
Mm,
sweet to the liver, sweet to the mouth, bitter to the stomach, bitter to the liver.
Yes.
So all your liver herbs are bitter herbs. So that digestive tea mix, we affectionately call it Dig tea.
Oh, yeah.
And we make up a whole batch of it and heat it up. We've seen remarkable results. I myself suffered from anemia for many, many years, and I realized my first husband was a drug addict and an alcoholic, so life was a little stressful.
Mm,
And even when I was a single mother for 4 years, still I suffered from anemia. And this is a huge journey. They said, Barbara, you must be bleeding somewhere. You have to have an esophagoscopy, a colonoscopy. And I only went and had all these because I was under so much pressure. A single mother with 6 children. But there was nothing wrong there. And then I just had to work it out for myself. So I went to my anatomy and physiology books and I studied iron. And iron is bound up in food and it needs acid to free it.
mhm.
And your ferritin levels, which are iron stored, your iron is stored with protein. But if your hydrochloric acid levels are down, you don't have enough protein.
Yeah.
And I thought, my problem's low hydrochloric acid.
Yeah.
So I put that tea together to boost my hydrochloric acid levels.
Wow.
And after 6 months, I had another blood test. My hemoglobin was 15. My ferritin levels were way up. And yet my ferritin levels at one point were 3. My hemoglobin levels at one point were 5. So that's how low I used to get. All I did was boost my hydrochloric acid.
Mm.
In fact, in my book, Self Heal by Design, I've got a section on anemia, and I've got my story in the back of there because it's a remarkable story. It was just hydrochloric acid.
Yeah. That's incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible. One of the other conditions or groups of conditions that are just growing really rapidly today are neurological issues. Alzheimer's is a big one. Have you seen any good results with Alzheimer's disease in terms of diet, supplements, treatments that you recommend?
We have, and much depends on why.
Yeah.
So in England, you've got the history of Margaret Thatcher. You've got also in the US, Ronald Reagan, who boasted that they only needed 5 hours sleep a night, and yet they spent the last 20 years with severe Alzheimer's dementia. And now the research, especially Dr. Matthew Walker in his book, Why We Sleep, he shows that it's in the early hours of the night, the glymphatic system that's made up of glial cells cleans up any little beginnings of amyloid plaques.
Yeah.
And of course, what they have found in people with dementia doing postmortems on them, they've all got these amyloid plaques, these calcified deposits. So I think if Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan had known that, they would have gone to bed early.
Yeah,
See, it's in the
exactly.
early hours of the night, this glymphatic system keeps a check on all that. I'm not saying all Alzheimer's is due to lack of sleep, but it's a huge factor.
Yeah,
We had one lady, she came to our retreat with Alzheimer's. If someone comes with Alzheimer's, they have to come with a carer
yeah.
because we're not a hospital. And she was 69. And when I looked at her, she just looked through me,
Mhm.
beyond me. And I discovered she didn't drink water and her bowels hadn't opened for 6 days. So we gave her herbs to get the bowels moving, got her hydrated. Within 48 hours, there was no sign of Alzheimer's or dementia.
Wow.
That was an easy fix. It's not always an easy
Yeah.
fix. So that it's different,
Yeah.
just different strokes for different folks is the
Yeah.
is the saying.
Well, yeah, I love you sharing this because one of the things it reminds me of is when we look at our bodies, we have this body clock, right? And we're connected to the earth with this, with these circadian rhythms. And there are different times, according to these ancient forms of medicine, where different organs are the most active. And that 11 a.m. time period to 3, that's like liver, gallbladder. You have that 3 to 7, that's more the colon, the lungs, the entire immune system. But there are times where the brain needs to regenerate and heal the most.
It does.
And those hours you're talking about, with lack of sleep, your body cannot regenerate and heal
No,
if you're not getting rest.
that is right. So there's not only the cleaning system, but melatonin. And melatonin is very interesting because melatonin is released by our gut flora.
Yeah.
So we're getting back to the gut again.
Yeah.
So the melatonin is released between, say, here's summertime, 10 p.m. and 3 a.m.
Mhm.
In the wintertime, between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. Melatonin is called the fix and rejuvenate nighttime hormone. So it's melatonin that's responsible for the increase in healing, regeneration in those early hours before midnight and just after midnight.
Now, what do you think the biggest reasons are cortisol and melatonin as hormones are incredibly imbalanced and they're causing all these other hormonal issues and healing issues. What are the root of those issues being out of balance and how can people bring those back into balance?
Do you know, there's an old saying of people burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And really, that's what it is. Instead of having that nightly rest, people are pushing themselves. I love God's perfect formula in that 8 hours to work, 8 hours to play, 8 hours to sleep.
Yeah.
And that's what I aim to. Right now we're playing. To me, this is fun.
This is fun. This is fun.
So it's getting back to proper sleep. But also you got to have your lights out. You got to have all technology out of your bedroom. You got to have an open window. You got to be sleeping in natural fiber, none of this polyester, nylon.
I recently, a few years ago, I switched almost on occasion, certain dress clothes I don't, but all my clothes now are wool. Almost
Yeah.
everything. I have a little bit of organic cotton, but almost everything now is wool that I wear
Yeah.
because
Well,
of that.
when I
And
was
the
in
Bible talks about this too, right? Not
It
combining
does.
to, yeah.
When I was in Scotland last year, I had a security guard around me the whole time for this big event. His name's Alex, and he's ex-Marine. He said, all the Marines now, their underwear, their boxer shorts, their under T-shirts, all 100% merino.
Yeah.
It's really fine. You see, in the sheep, the wool at the neck is very, very fine and it's not prickly.
Yeah.
So that's what they make the underwear out of. Whereas the back, we make the big, thick, woolly coats out of that.
Okay.
The Aran jumpers out of that.
I don't want to share too much, but I'm actually wearing the merino underwear right now. So it's the
Yes,
best.
yes,
Absolutely
yes.
the best.
Oh, it is. And I say to people, I'm only little and I get cold quickly, so I borrow from the sheep. And I love this. This is cashmere.
Oh, it's wonderful.
That's particularly soft. So when you wear natural fiber, especially the wool, and the reason why the Marines like it is it dries so quickly.
Yes.
And they can wear it for 5 days when they're out on patrol.
And it doesn't smell.
No, because
Yeah.
it's breathing and it dries quickly and they don't chill if they get wet.
Why do you think you've become such an international phenomenon to the point to where you're speaking at certain events, you have Marine bodyguards, people there protecting you? Why do you think your message has resonated with so many people?
I think because it's simple and I think because it's reachable. And probably my most famous is put a crystal of Celtic salt or Baja salt on your tongue and drink a glass of water. That one's just gone viral. And you know why I think it's gone viral? Because you can do it.
You can do
It's
it at
just
home.
so
You don't have to
easy.
pay a doctor. You can, yeah,
No.
yeah. That's the thing that I so appreciate about everything you put out is that I can go into my pantry, I can go to my local farmer, I can, go to my grocery store, I can just, yeah, open up my cabinet, and there's medicine there. That's
Yeah.
inexpensive. That I don't have to pay thousands of dollars of insurance or this, or it doesn't have a side effect.
That's right. It's so simple. It's a reachable thing. It's something that everyone can do. I think that's why it's so popular.
I think one of the things that's happened today in mainstream medicine, by the way, when you look at the statistics, mainstream medicine today is the lead, people trust it less than they ever have by far in history.
Do you know, I hope so. I
Mm.
really hope so. I'm not against doctors. Some of my best friends are doctors, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll be one of my best friends now.
Yeah.
That that I think most doctors are ethical, but
Yeah.
the pharmaceutical company is not.
That's right.
And you can testify to this more than I can, that a large part of what you learn in medicine today is pharmacology.
Well, yeah, yeah, and I would also say this is that it's the to your point, a lot of doctors do have good intentions,
Yeah,
but the most doctors get 0 hours of nutrition training, MDs.
that's
Now, I
right.
have I have a
That's
DC
right.
training, so we
That's
did get
right.
some nutrition training, and we had a little pharmacology, but not near as much as a full on MD. But the problem is zero nutrition. The only thing they learn is how to diagnose common things and prescribe drugs for them or do a surgery. So there's no nutrition, there's no herbs, there's no
No.
lifestyle. How many times I've had patients who have come to me, and it used to be where they would, because I practice natural medicine, they would come see me after they've already seen 10 different doctors, right? And you've probably had the same thing. It's like they've been to all these doctors, finally they're desperate, and then they go see you. But so often, I would ask them what their doctor told them to do. And most of the time it was just take a drug. The average doctor visit is 7 minutes. And that's the visit. You know how much time they look at the file for? 1 minute. So how can a doctor ever know you and treat you correctly when it's like, okay, oh, hypothyroid, oh, maybe thyroid. Okay, here's a,
Oh, it's on
they
the
can't do it.
computer. They just click, 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 and the computer will tell them what drug to give.
Yeah.
But I going back to that Psalm 146, put not your trust in princes. I believe the doctors should stop putting their trust in the pharmaceutical
Wow,
company.
that's so good.
They must stop because they trust that they've done the research. And we've seen it in the paper many times. The whistleblower, they're not
That's right.
doing the testing. They're not.
I want to say the five largest lawsuits ever in the United States are for pharmaceutical companies hiding evidence that their drug was killing people. There was a drug called Vioxx. Now, this was probably 15 years ago, but it killed almost, now some people say it's more than this, 100,000 people, one drug alone. And so, but again, there's so much money behind this. But I think because of one thing I do appreciate about social media is that people want to know the truth.
Yeah.
And I think COVID coming out of that, more people than ever realized, oh, I've been lied to. So if I've been
Yeah.
lied to about COVID, what else
That's
have I
right.
been lied to about all
That's
this
right.
time? And so then people sort of wake up and become more aware, and then
That's
they
right.
start searching out, the
And
truth.
and a very similar thing happens at our health retreat. At our health retreat, people start doing the juicing, natural remedies, and they're getting responses. And so you know what they think? They're right on the health. Maybe they're right on God.
That's right.
And that's what we love.
Yeah, I love that as well. I had a spinal infection a few years ago from just a minor medical procedure went wrong, and it was a natural procedure using my own cells, and I got my disc got infected, and then my bone, and then I had an abscess in my spinal cord. And I had a doctor tell me, an infectious disease doctor, he told me this. He said, your best case scenario is you have chronic pain the rest of your life. And he said, in all likelihood, you're going to be permanently disabled or we're going to have to fuse your spine. This is 3 years ago. And I remember for just a short time thinking, "Oh, like 24 hours, my life is over." And then I realized, you know what? The great physician is better than this physician. And I just meditated on Bible verses day and night. Like, one in particular, I want to think it's Psalms maybe 102, and it was, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all of his benefits,
Yeah.
who forgives all of our sins, heals all of our
103.
diseases." Yeah, 103. And I
Mm.
just meditated on that verse day and night and day and night. And you know what? I have zero pain. I'm healed. I'm healthier than
You
I was
you
before.
claim the promises, and now you'll know that all you have to do is put a poultice on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did
And
some poultices.
it'll draw that
I
out.
did poultices. I did a lot of hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah,
That was
good.
I was blown away at the benefits of,
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
know you did that. So you've
Yeah.
utilized hyperbaric chamber.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what are the benefits? How what do you use it?
Well, it's based on Henry's law that under pressure, more gas goes into a liquid. And of course, the gas is pure oxygen,
Mhm.
and the liquid is our blood, which is the oxygen
Well,
carrier. And so, being in that hyperbaric chamber, you're getting blasts of oxygen.
yeah. And one thing I've heard you quote before, I want to say it was Otto Warburg, right? And he said
Yeah, yeah.
that the cause of cancer it's really twofold. It's excess sugar and not enough oxygen in the
And
body.
cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen.
Mhm.
And so that's what they're finding. The hyperbaric chamber was first developed for divers with bends
Mm.
because, the air we breathe, 79% is nitrogen and the 21% is oxygen. So the divers, when they come up too quick, the nitrogen can't be dispersed. It goes into little bubbles in joints and muscles, and that's the bends, that's the pain.
Mm.
So they developed the hyperbaric chamber to put the divers in to blast this oxygen in, which disperses the nitrogen, and out it goes.
Wow.
So that's why it was originally developed for divers with bends. But then they discovered that, especially diabetics with slow wound healing,
Yes.
and they're finding it's also helping cancer patients because, and the glycolytic cycle in the cell doesn't use oxygen, but you get down to the Krebs cycle in the mitochondria,
You
it uses oxygen.
yeah.
So that cycle will give 18 times more energy than the glycolytic with no oxygen.
That's powerful.
What a
And you
difference.
mentioned certain conditions. I mean, yeah, it's amazing for cancer. It's amazing for stroke patients or people who have had any sort of brain trauma. I use it with a lot of families where
Yeah.
the kids have autism,
Yeah.
and so powerful. So I love that you're utilizing that as well. Um, Barbara, this has been a huge blessing. Let me ask you this: what is your favorite Bible verse when it comes to health and healing?
That's very difficult.
I know, because you quoted. By the way, your knowledge of Scripture today has been probably the thing I've been most impressed with, and I really appreciate
Well,
that.
I love it, and it's Ecclesiastes chapter 3. It says, "To everything there is a season and a time
Mhm.
for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which was planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a
Mm,
time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. There is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven." I love that verse because you can apply it so much
yes.
to the healing of the human body. And there is a season and a time for every purpose. I say to people, there's a time for you to exercise.
Yes.
There's a time for you to sleep.
Yeah.
So timing, and you mentioned earlier circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's the best circadian rhythm setter? Sunshine.
Yeah.
And that's what I do to get over jet lag. So yes, it was very hard for me to choose a verse to give you, and I'm sorry I gave you more than one verse. I
You
gave
know
you a
what?
few.
It was a blessing. And if anybody wants to know what Barbara does in her spare time, it's not scroll social media. It's memorize Scripture, which is way more healing, way more healthy. Well, Barbara, this was such an honor today. I am so grateful for the incredible work you've done in helping teach people how to use food as medicine, herbs as medicine, the Bible as medicine, nature as medicine. And just so grateful for you taking a lot of these complex matters and making them simple, free in a lot of cases for so many people. So thanks so much for coming on the show today. It was a real blessing for
It's
me.
been my pleasure.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Well, everybody, hey, thanks so much for watching the Dr. Josh Axe Show. Remember, each and every week we're diving deep into the science and principles behind how you can heal physically, mentally, and spiritually. Don't forget to subscribe. I want to mention this. Oftentimes on things like YouTube, some of my videos have been shadow banned because people like Barbara and I are talking about things that are controversial. So make sure to subscribe so this shows up in your feed, future videos with incredible people of wisdom like Barbara. That's the number one thing you can do to support the show. Subscribe. Thank you for sharing as well. There are millions of people today struggling with chronic disease, and the wisdom that Barbara shared today could help them heal. Thanks for watching. Thanks again to Barbara O'Neill, and we'll see you on the next episode.
There are 4 vital elements needed for life. Number 1 is oxygen, and we've looked at the importance of oxygen many times this week. Number 2 is water. Our body from the neck down is 75% water, from the neck up 85% water. The third most vital element needed for life is sodium. And the fourth is potassium. Water. One of the first questions I ask people when they come to me for help with their health is, how much water do you drink? Here are some of the answers. Oh, I don't like water. Another answer is not much. Another answer is, I don't drink water, or I'm visiting the little house all day. Another answer is, if I drink too much water, my legs swell. These last 2 answers tell me that the water is not getting inside the cell. You know, there's been some deaths on the Kokoda Trail, and these people are drinking 5 litres of water a day. They're perspiring huge amounts. So the water's going in and the water's coming out, but it's not coming out as water. Have you ever licked your perspiration? It's very salty. These people are losing a lot of sodium, but not just sodium, they're losing a lot of other minerals. So how do we get the water inside the cell? Because these people just drinking water, the water is bypassing the cell and just coming straight out in the form of perspiration or urine. But both perspiration and urine is just not water that's coming out. Yes, waste is coming out, but there are also minerals that are being lost. So how do we get the water inside the cell? To look at that, we need to go to the third most vital element needed for life, which is sodium. We need to look at the way sodium is found in nature. Seawater contains 92 minerals. Seawater is often called an isotonic solution because it is the exact same mineral and proportion as is found in the body. Of those 92 minerals, 30% is made up of sodium, and approximately 50% is made up of chloride. Because sodium chloride makes up the largest amount of the minerals, when the water is evaporated from the seawater, the first crystals formed are sodium chloride. And so what happens is usually that is scooped up, it is bleached white, aluminium is put with it so it runs freely. There's your table salt. Table salt contains 2 minerals, and those 2 minerals are sodium chloride. Sodium chloride are such harsh minerals that if you were to inject sodium chloride straight into the veins, you would kill the person. Sodium chloride, they are both essential to the body. Sodium's the third most vital element needed for life, but we need to be taking sodium into our body the way it's found in nature, with all of its other minerals. The salt that we use is Celtic salt, and Celtic salt contains 82 minerals. That's pretty close. Where are the other 10? They're in such pico proportions, barely measurable, that it's impossible that a few are lost. But hey, 82 is still a lot closer to 92 than 2. As I said, sodium and chloride are both important. Sodium is used everywhere in the body. It's in its largest abundance on the outside of the cell. We call that extracellular fluid. And the largest concentration of mineral inside the cell is potassium. Potassium is found in rich abundance in all your fresh fruits and vegetables. Chloride. Our hydrochloric acid is made from chloride, so chloride is important. So often people are told that they need to stop salt. Why are they told to stop salt? Because they're having too much of the sodium chloride, too much of the table salt. And because it's in an imbalanced form, it's causing an imbalance in the body, right down at the cellular level. Sodium chloride are such harsh minerals that they kill the taste buds. They're harsh when they're by themselves. They're harsh when they're not balanced with all the other minerals. Have you noticed that people that use a lot of table salt, they put it on everything, and they put it on even before they taste the food? Do you know why? Because it kills the taste buds. No wonder they can't taste anything. So the more they use it, the more they have to use. Whereas Celtic salt, with all of its minerals, awakens the taste buds. You can get other salts like Himalayan salt. It has about 82 minerals. There's a Murray River salt, and they're both like pink flakes. It's got about, I think, 75 minerals. So there are a few salts. If you're not sure on the mineral balance of your salt that you're buying, just ring the manufacturer and ask him for a mineral analysis of his salt. No, salt is important. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about salt. It's Matthew 5, chapter 5, verse 13. It says, "Ye are the salt of the earth. If the salt hath lost its savour, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men." How does the salt lose its savour? I would like to suggest that this salt has lost its savour. It's Old English. It's lost its minerals. And what does the Bible say it's good for? Henceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men. No, we need salt as it's found in nature with all of its other minerals. And this salt brings a balance. When someone is not having enough potassium, and if someone is not eating any fresh fruits and vegetables, their potassium levels go down. And if that same person is putting table salt on everything with its high sodium and chloride, sodium levels rise. Notice that there's a bilayered membrane around every cell, and in that membrane there are sodium potassium pumps that basically look like that. And these pumps are constantly working like this, causing the sodium and the potassium to be monitored at the right levels. But if someone is getting too much sodium and not having enough potassium, then the concentration of sodium rises, the concentration of potassium lowers, and because of osmosis diffusion, too much sodium starts to merge in to the cell. When too much sodium merges into the cell swells. There's your high blood pressure. Your doctor is right. Table salt will increase blood pressure. But the answer is not no salt, because if no salt happens, then sodium levels go too low, and the little bit of sodium that is found inside the cell, it drops too low, and then the cell swells. So no salt and table salt both can contribute to high blood pressure. We need to be having salt in its balanced form with all of its other minerals. And I think you'll agree with me, what's a baked potato without salt? What's avocado and tomato on sourdough spelt toast without salt? Salt awakens the food. And your hydrochloric acid is made from chloride. We cannot digest properly unless we're having adequate salt. Lining the gastrointestinal tract are villi. On those villi are receptor sites, and these receptor sites are to take the glucose through and into the blood. Inside that receptor site there is a carrier, And the carrier is the one that takes the glucose through and into the blood. But the carrier says, I will not accept you, glucose, unless you come with a molecule of sodium. When the sodium is present, then the carrier will take the glucose through and into the blood. Let me give you straight from the horse's mouth on this. This was a sentence in the Anatomy and Physiology book. Let me give it to you. Glucose, start again. Sodium is the main transport system of glucose across the brush border cell and into the blood. You will find that in every anatomy and physiology book. What's happening if someone's not having any salt? Well, there is a little bit of sodium in your food, in your fruits and vegetables. If there's not enough sodium around, not every bit of glucose can get into your blood, which explains why some people that go on a salt-free diet find their energy levels go down, because they're not getting the nutrients out of their gut as they should and into the blood. No wonder it's the most vital element needed for life. We need it. The salt that we use here at Misty Mountain Health Retreat is Celtic salt. And that Celtic salt contains 3 magnesiums. It contains magnesium bromide, magnesium sulfate, and magnesium chloride. Magnesium is a water-hungry molecule, so it's always trying to pull the water into itself. That explains why on a rainy day our salt can get quite moist, because magnesium is a water-hungry molecule. So when you put a crystal of the Celtic salt on your tongue and then drink a glass of water, when the crystal's on your tongue, even if it only be for a few seconds, then the mucous membranes in the mouth are absorbing, first of all, the magnesium. Remember, it's a water-hungry molecule. And that magnesium is taken via the blood straight to the cell, and it pulls the water inside the cell. It is the quickest way to hydrate a body, is to put that crystal of Celtic salt on your tongue, take that glass of water, and it ensures that the water is pulled inside the cell. I suggest that we do it at least once or twice a day. Here on the detox program, when guests are having the exercise program, especially in the summer, and then the steam bath at night, I advise they do it about 3 times a day. That would be about every second glass of water. If you put the salt into the water, the magnesium in the salt will absorb all the water into it, so you haven't got that free access of magnesium as easily as you put it on your tongue, which will take it and through the blood to the cell to pull that water inside the cell. When the water goes through that membrane, there's a little motor in that membrane, and as the water rushes through, that little membrane starts spinning. And the spinning of that little motor inside the cell gives us a unit of energy. So when everyone's feeling tired mid-morning, all reaching for their Mars bar or cake or pie or sandwich, cup of coffee, just take your crystal of Celtic salt, have your glass of water, and you watch your energy levels have a little pickup. Because as we saw the other day, that stomach needs a rest between meals. It doesn't need more food. It needs water. And often the body doesn't know the difference between water and hunger. That's why if it's between meals and you're hungry, just have a glass of water. If you're feeling tired, have that little bit of salt before you have the water, and it'll pick you up. That's why if you're going to go and walk the Kokoda Trail, make sure you have a little bag of salt crystals, Celtic salt crystals in your pocket. Celtic salt has more magnesium than the Himalayan salt or the Murray River salt, and you can see it because it's just a lot wetter. The other salts do have magnesiums, but not quite as much as the Celtic salt. So if you're going to put the Celtic salt crystals into your grinder, just dry them out in the oven first before you put them into your grinder. When the weather's very, very wet, Sometimes we have to take the salt out of our grinder 2 or 3 times a week, dry it out again, put it back into the grinder so that it can be ground at the table. When you think about seawater, that it's called an isotonic solution, which is it's the exact same mineral and balance and proportion is found in blood, found in the intra and extracellular fluid in the tissues. You can see why in the sailor's manual it says if you're shipwrecked to start sipping little bits of seawater straight away, and it will keep you alive for many days. But if the person waits 3 days till they're very dehydrated, then drinks a whole glass of water, you can see that that will put the mineral balance in and out of their cells way out, and they certainly can start to go a little bit mad. Also in the war, if the Navy had wounded men that needed a blood transfusion, they would transfuse with seawater. Remember, it's the exact same mineral balance and proportion as is found in the body. I have an interview in one of our books of a Dr. Lalangri, who is a French doctor who's written a whole book on salt. He said, there are no salt issues in France, because he said in France we use the salt from the Celtic Sea. He said there are 3 books in France written by doctors on salt. There's no salt issue. He said, because we use the mineralized salt. He said, if someone's got high blood pressure, I put them on the mineralized salt and it can balance it out. It's only when sodium is in an imbalanced state or lost its savor, as the Bible verse says, that it becomes a problem. So when you think about it, we cry seawater, we sweat seawater, baby swims in seawater. It's this same mineral balance. What about calcium? It cannot get into the cell by itself. It needs vitamin D. When vitamin D is present, calcium can be pulled inside the cell, and when it comes into the cell, all the other minerals piggyback on the back of it. What about glucose? Glucose can't get into the cell by itself. It needs insulin. Insulin's the key that unlocks the door to allow the glucose inside the cell. How many people today are sick through ignorance? How many people are not drinking water because their feet swell or they're visiting the little house? If you have that little bit of magnesium in the form of the Celtic salt 3 times a day, the water will get into the cell and the feet won't swell, and the person's not visiting the little house quite as much. But how many do not realise that? So they're not drinking enough water, they're not having the whole salt, and the highest source of magnesium in the vegetable kingdom is your dark greens. They're not in the sunshine because many Aussies are scared of the sun today. One lady told me that every time she goes out to put the clothes on the line, she has a hat on, sunglasses, white gloves, so the sun's not even touching her. So many people are vitamin D deficient. As a result, calcium and mineral deficient. Do you remember on our first lecture, I showed you that a lot of research is showing that 92% of DNA damage is from the mineral deficiency. Is it because of the calcium deficiency? Because of the vitamin D deficiency. That's why the detective hat has to go on. Why are these things so? So many people are low in vitamin D, thus low in the minerals. Many have been given the wrong message on fat. They've stopped the fat, so they're hungry all day, so they're overdoing the carbohydrates, which overworks the pancreas. The pancreas getting weary, stops producing the insulin, and the glucose can't get in. Can you see this scenario? Water can't get in, minerals can't get in, glucose can't get in, and when you think about it, this is the CBD. This is the central business district of the whole of the human body, inside the cell. The body says, we've got a crisis here. We can't get the basic nutrients and requirements for this CBD to function in. So the body says, we've got one more thing up our sleeve. We'll just force it in. What's that called? Blood pressure. That's what blood pressure is. It's a pressure building up to force these things in the cell because we're at a crisis level.
So what is the cause of high blood pressure? There are many causes. But let me write this down for you so you can put it together. High blood pressure. And with some people, it'll be every one of these points. And with some people, it won't be. That's why the detective hat has to be put on. High blood pressure can be caused by dehydration. In dehydration, little capillary networks shut down to try and conserve full blood volume. That builds up pressure. High blood pressure can be caused by no salt. High blood pressure can be caused by table salt. High blood pressure can be caused by no greens, no magnesium, water can't get in. High blood pressure can be caused by no sun, no vitamin D, minerals can't get in. High blood pressure can be caused because of inactivity. When you exercise, you get the circulation of the blood out of the internal organs or areas of the body and out to the extremity, which takes pressure off the heart. High blood pressure can be caused because of a high sugar, high carbohydrate diet. We'll say high sugar, high wheat. Earlier in the week, I showed you how this wheat is getting that blood sugar level up too high, wearing out the pancreas. It can be caused because of a no-fat diet with probably small amounts of margarine, and of course no fat is referring nothing at all. No fat, we'll say, or margarine. Wow. You see, there's more to high blood pressure than meets the eye. High blood pressure can be caused of constant distress. I don't say stress because everyone has a bit of stress in their life, and one man said to me, I love stress, it keeps me working hard. I get heaps done. So then I had to define distress. Constant distress is wearing for the body. That's why if there's constant distress, you have to find out why and what can be done to alleviate that. With some people, it's one or two. With some people, it might be all of them. And if you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. What's also necessary to keep that blood nice and thin to prevent high blood pressure is blood thinners. So let me give you a list of blood thinners. There's no need for rat poison, warfarin. Did you know that that's what warfarin is? It is rat poison. And there are far more powerful things that can be used that don't have the danger of the side effect of the warfarin. You know, there's a lot of information coming out now reassessing whether aspirin is really thinning that blood effectively. One newspaper article on research done 6 months ago, this is early 2014, they're finding out that aspirin's causing brain bleeds. But you can thin the blood beautifully without any dangers of these drugs that I mentioned. Water. Ideally 2 to 2.5 litres per day. I'm going to define water in a minute. That keeps the blood thin. And as we looked at earlier in the week, it needs to be taken between meals, not with meals. Celtic salt, or the whole salt, together with water, keeps that blood nice and thin. Cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is a remarkable herb. You might be familiar with Jethro Kloss's book, Back to Eden. Jethro Kloss devotes half a page to every herb, 10 pages to cayenne pepper, a remarkable herb. A fantastic blood thinner. It is known to strengthen arterial walls. It's even known to repair heart muscle. If you're not used to it, just have a little bit every day. You'll get used to it. I'm used to it now. One person said, but it burns. I said, not for long, just for a few minutes. It'll pass. You know how the police were using capsicum spray Do you know that after that experience, the criminal who got the capsicum spray in his eyes, he would have better eyesight? Yes, it debilitates. Oh, yes, it hurts. But the next day, he'd be able to see better. Yes, if you're brave, you can try it. Cayenne pepper in the eye. It doesn't sting for long, briefly, and it never hurts. One doctor in Back to Eden, he said it's impossible to abuse cayenne pepper and it will never burn. It feels like it is, but it will never harm the tissues. Garlic, there's a lot of information coming out now, has been really for the last 10 years, on what a powerful herb garlic is regarding the blood and regarding the heart. Another blood thinner is ginger. Ginger's a remarkable herb. It's a potent anti-inflammatory herb, but it also is a blood thinner. So you can grate some ginger, pour boiling water on it, delicious tea. Or you can put it in all your stir fries, put it in every legume dish, delicious. And yet it's thinning your blood. Omega-3, with its 3 double bonds, is a blood thinner. So there's your chia seed, there's your flaxseed, and the nut that is the highest in omega-3 is the walnut. So as you can see by my list here, there is no need to take drugs that have their possible side effects. We need to keep that blood nice and thin. Remember, it's the life of the flesh. We have a book in our library. We also sell this book, and it's called One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. And the whole book is on water. It would probably be one of the most interesting books that I have ever read. Dr. Batman Gehaldi, we'll call him Dr. B because it's a difficult name. He goes into every single organ, every single part of the body and how it is affected by full hydration and how it is affected by dehydration. There are 2 other titles to his book. Well, the first title is One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. The other title is He's Not Sick, He's Thirsty. Another title is Don't Treat Thirst with Medications. He was a political prisoner in India. I think it was early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And in the hospital, there were a lot of sick people, and he only had one thing that he could use, and that was water. So no matter what the problem was, he'd give them a glass of water. 15 minutes later, he'd give them another glass of water. 15 minutes later, he'd give them another glass of water. He only did it because that's all he had. But he noticed as the days and the weeks went by, people were recovering. People with constipation were no longer constipated. People with stomach ulcers were no longer suffering from stomach ulcers. You see, the lining of the stomach has a thick mucosa wall on it, and mucus is 99% water. And he shows in dehydration, it's one of the first places that we lose water is the stomach. Inside that mucosa lining, there's sodium bicarbonate, designed to neutralize stomach acid if it tries to come through. Well, in this tiny little layer here, there's no sodium bicarbonate. So very easy for the hydrochloric acid to start eating little holes in the lining of the stomach. He claims at the writing of his book to have healed 3,000 cases of stomach ulcer with water alone. He shows that a glass of water half an hour before a meal thickens that mucosa wall. Our hydrochloric acid is made from water. Today is Wednesday. Yesterday, Tuesday, I needed to drink 2 glasses of water so my liver could make enough hydrochloric acid for breakfast this morning. Yesterday, I needed to drink 2 glasses of water, another 2, so my liver could make enough hydrochloric acid for lunch today. And if a person eats 3 meals, that's 6 glasses of water the day before just to make the digestive juices. Wow, that's only digestion. That's not even mentioning all the other body parts. You see, our water loss in a day, I looked at this a little earlier, so I'll recap it. Out of the kidneys, our water loss in a day is approximately 1.5 litres. Via our skin, it is approximately 0.5 of a litre. Out of our colon, it is approximately 0.3 of a litre. If someone has diarrhea and are diarrheaing a lot, it could come up to 0.5, even 1 litre. And out of our lungs, for every exhalation, there is moisture, 0.2 of a litre. So that's a 2.5 litre loss every day. And have you noticed we've got no reserve tank on the back? The only water that goes in is the water we put in. And that's what Dr. B's book is all on. He says one of the first places it's felt is the stomach. Another, of course, is digestion. When we don't have enough water to make the digestive juices, which are the enzymes that break our food down. He also showed that in the pancreas, it is affected by dehydration. Let me show you. In the pancreas, it releases it releases 4 digestive enzymes in the gut. So we'll put gastrointestinal tract. In the pancreas, pancreatic lipase is released, and it does the final breakdown of fat. Pancreatic amylase does the final breakdown on starch. And trypsin, I'll just do a trip here, it does the breakdown of protein. And chymotrypsin, it also does the breakdown of protein. So this is 4 enzymes released from the pancreas that finalise digestion. Most people don't realise that the pancreas is probably the main organ of digestion. When people die of pancreatic cancer, they usually die of malnutrition because they haven't got the final breakdown of their food, so their food can't get out of their gastrointestinal tract and into their blood, so they basically die of malnutrition. The pancreas also releases 2 hormones from the blood, and this is glycogen and insulin. Now those hormones are released into the blood, and they're the ones that control our blood glucose levels. If they go too high, insulin gets it down. If they go too low, glycogen gets it up. These hormones are constantly balancing the glucose levels in our blood. Very important organ is the pancreas. All of these hormones and these ones here are made from water. So a person can develop diabetes, digestive problems, all because they're dehydrated. Let's move on down to the colon. One of the main functions of the colon is to take water out so stools are formed. If the body is dehydrated, more water gets taken out than should be taken out, then we get rabbit pellets, cement, basically there's constipation. Very difficult to have 3 evacuations a day, which Dr. Kellogg said is a necessity if you're having 3 intakes a day in a dehydrated person. Dr. B also showed that dehydration is felt in the brain. Our brain is a hydroelectric system. No hydro, no electricity. A person can suffer from depression, negative thought patterns, because they're dehydrated. Something else happens in dehydration with the brain, and that is the brain cells shrink. And when the brain cells shrink, that hurts. It hurts very much. When I say to people, do you get headaches? A common answer is, oh, only if I'm dehydrated. Dehydration is also felt in the lungs. Here are the little bronchioles. At the end of each bronchiole, there are alveoli, and they look like a little bunch of grapes. And that alveoli is where that gaseous exchange takes place. So when we breathe in, they fill up with oxygen. And over those little alveoli are a little capillary network. And what the blood does is it picks up the oxygen and drops the carbon dioxide, then we breathe it out. It's a fascinating system. And Gray's Anatomy says we have 300 million of these. But in each little alveoli, there's a droplet of water. And because of the surface tension of water, do you understand the surface tension of water? When I trained as a hairdresser, I had to learn about surface tension of water. When you put water on your scalp, it doesn't really get through because of the oil. You put shampoo on, it breaks the surface tension of water, and of course it can get through. Because of the surface tension of water, and this little minuscule droplet of water in the alveoli, when you breathe out, the majority of your carbon dioxide is breathed out. And so you can get a full quota of oxygen back in. In dehydration, we don't have that little bit of water. So when the person breathes out, they can't breathe out all their carbon dioxide, so that when they breathe in, they're not getting as much oxygen as they could be getting. So here's another point with the most vital element needed for life. We need to be well hydrated to be able to get that oxygen. And we need to be having the proper salt and all of its minerals for the cell to utilise that water. So you can see they all interact with each other. We need all of them. I had a man do our program, it was a few years ago now, he's 44, and he had 3 main problems. He had a very congested chest. You see, in dehydration, to try and conserve the water loss with each breath, the little bronchioles shrink up. He had chronic headaches. You see, the cells shrink when we're dehydrated. And he had lower back pain. Did you know that 75% of our upper body weight is held in our lower back by water? So in a dehydrated body, there's not as much water there that should be there, and the back hurts. The lower back gets painful. So he had these 3 main problems. I said to him, how much water do you drink a day? He said, I don't drink water. I said, no water? He said, no, I don't drink any water. He said, I don't like it. He said, I have a lot of headache tablets and I drink it down with Coke and cups of tea and coffee. Aha. And he was living on the pills because he had so much pain here, he had so much congestion here, and he'd have antibiotic after antibiotic. Do you know, on last night on the news, 7:30 report stated that because of a little boy who nearly died from too many antibiotics, they're saying now doctors must stop prescribing so many antibiotics. It said last night on the news that Australia is the highest user of antibiotics of any country in the world. Isn't that incredible? Can you see what's the use of the antibiotic if this man's remaining dehydrated? That's why the detective hat has to be put on. Why are these things so? I said, no water? He said, no water. I said, As he went through the program, he started drinking more water. He started to drink almost a litre a day. Now, the student might say to me, no, Barbara, he's supposed to drink at least 2, maybe 2.5 litres a day. I said, it's pretty good. Yesterday it was none. Build it up, little by little, build it up. By the end of the week, he was drinking 2 litres of water. He said, this is amazing. He said, I haven't had headaches for 2 days. He said, first time since I can remember. He said, my chest is getting a lot looser. And he said, my lower back pain is gone. Whoa. What was his problem? It was dehydration. Can you see if that point's not addressed? The osteopath who's trying to fix his back isn't going to go far. The doctor or the naturopath that's trying to fix his lungs aren't going to go far. The neurosurgeon that's taking scans of his brain to try and find out why it's working is not going to get anywhere when it's just water. If someone has headaches and say to me, but I drink 2 litres of water a day, my answer to that is, well, it's not the water. Let's go one step further and find out what it is. And it could be many things. That's why we have to be detectives. Have you ever seen Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie's detective? He notes things no one else looks at. There's a little thread on the carpet. There's the little nick in the curtain, and everyone's rolling their eyes at the silly little things he's looking at. But in the final assessment of finding the, who did the crime, those little points in the puzzle turn out to be some of the most important pieces of information. We need to be private investigators. We need to be Hercule Poirot. We need to look at every point. I don't think we should run ourselves ragged finding every little point, but when you start investigating, you start to get an idea. And it was not hard to find out why this man was having his problems, especially at the end of the week when his lower back pain was gone, his headaches were gone, and his chest was almost totally clear. It can take a little bit longer for all that to come up. I saw him 6 weeks later. He jumped out of the car, he had a huge smile on his face. He had a big bottle of water in his hand. He said, 3 litres a day. He'd got his life back. It can be that simple. And that's why anyone that comes to me for help, I go through these 8 laws, because these are the true remedies. And often you can find little glitches here and there that give you an indication of why these things are so. A friend of Michael's is a bricklayer, and he rang up Michael the other day. He's a bit of a rough bloke. He said, I got this lower back pain. He said, I've been to the chiropractor. He can't fix me. He said, all the blokes on the job site are getting it. Michael said, what do you drink? He said, we all drink Coke. How much Coke do you drink a day? A couple of litres. Michael said, well, I've got a simple little test that you can try. Get rid of the Coke and drink water. He said, water? I said, is it just water? Michael said, do you remember that one? Remember what you used to drink? He said, righto, we've got nothing else to lose. Do you know, within a couple of days, all the men had no lower back pains. All the men were coming alive. The work on the workforce improved. The output improved. They were all so happy. What was the change? It was just water. One of the problems with things like Coke and coffee, they contain 2 major dehydrating agents, which is the caffeine and the sugar. And so even if the person drinks 1 or 2 glasses a day, they're still not getting hydrated because the coffee and the Coke are taking it all away. It must be water and water alone. What's the best water? Well, the best water is pure water. And most taps today contain water that has fluoride and chlorine in it. The chlorine's not a huge problem because if you pour a jug and put it on the bench, within half an hour the chlorine has all evaporated. But there is a problem with the fluoride. So we must get water filters. I think reverse osmosis is the main filter. There could be more. Please do a search on it. I can't assure you because I don't know enough about water filters because we've never used one because we've always had the rainwater or the creek water. We have beautiful water here. So very important to drink good water. One man said to me, what about an alkaline water machine? Well, as you saw yesterday in our acid-alkaline lecture, alkaline is very important. But alkaline water is not going to do a huge amount if the person is eating a lifestyle that is all acid, eating a food program that's all acid, or partaking of a lifestyle that is all acid. It is true, an alkaline water can be a contributing factor in the whole picture. So water, we need water. It's a not negotiable subject. You just got to find out how to get it in. I never used to drink water. I was breastfeeding or pregnant non-stop for 14 years. My last baby, I breastfed for 3 years and I hardly ever drank water. I drank maybe 1 or 2 glasses a day. I commonly had headaches, commonly had migraines whenever we travelled. I hated travelling in the car because I always had a terrible headache at the end of the day. I also used to get terrible sinus problems. Do you know I don't get any of that now? When I discovered the importance of water drinking, little by little I started to implement it. I used to say to my friends, I've just discovered a new medicine. The kids aren't getting colds anymore, a whole lot of things happening. And they said, what is it? I said, water, just water. How many people get up in the morning and they don't have water? And in the morning is the most dehydrating time of the whole day. The best way to take water in is little by little by little by little. Your body can utilize it better. It's like a plant. If this plant was dry and I put 500 ml of water in there, we know where it would go. It would all run out the bottom. But if I put a half a cup in and then I come back and put another half cup in, then I come back and put another half cup in, I can maybe get nearly a litre in there without any running out. And it's the same with the body. Little by little is the best. The only time I will drink a whole glass of water at once would be when I wake up in the morning. Have you ever slept on a mattress on the floor? And in the morning you lift up the mattress and it's all damp underneath? That's the water that you have lost in the night. That's why you have to be very careful of your bedroom, because of the water that's coming out of your body in the night. That's why we always fold the bedclothes back and allow the bed to have a good air, have the windows open. It's even better if you can have a bedroom that has sun coming into the bed to purify it and air it. Important to try and get the mattress in the sun at least once a year. Change your mattress protectors. Also be cautious of under the bed. Always should have slats or wire which allows the moisture that you lose in the night to come away. Many people are tired when they wake up because of the air in their bedroom. You must very, very careful on the air in the bedroom, and as we looked at earlier, the electromagnetic field in that bedroom as well. So water is lost every day, water must be replaced. And here is a good rule of thumb: 25 kilo of body weight, not 2 kilo. 25 kilo of body weight to 1 litre of water. That's a good rule to assess how much water the children drink, and it's also a good incentive for weight loss, isn't it? I always said to my children when they wake up, and I say to my grandchildren now, have you watered your garden yet? What's the garden? Of course, it's that lovely flora inside your gut. In that catalyst program called Gut Reaction, one professor said, there's a literal jungle in there. So I say to my grandchildren, have you watered your garden yet? And they come up in the morning and say, Grandma, we've watered our garden. I said, I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased because now you can have breakfast. So it's always a rule in the home. If the child doesn't want to drink water, my answer is, I'm so sorry because you can't have breakfast now. It's very simple. So lots of little ways to encourage the children to drink water. You will notice if the children don't drink water, as soon as they've eaten, then they want to drink their water. And what the water does is it neutralizes the stomach acid. We need that stomach acid to be about a pH of 2.5. That's very acid. And your stomach needs to be that acid. You will not feel it because you drank a glass of water half an hour before the meal and you've got a nice thick mucosa wall there. So you will not feel it. But that pH is necessary for the enzymes in the stomach to be activated to be able to break your protein down. That's why you stop drinking about half an hour before the meal and you start drinking about an hour and a half to 2 hours after the meal. If someone's thirsty when they eat, by all means have a mouthful, but at the same time it needs to be assessed how much water has been drunk. So you can prevent needing to drink with your meals by drinking between your meals. As I said with exercise, not negotiable subject, and so is water. It's a not negotiable subject. And if you get sick, if you have diarrhea or constipation, or if you have a headache or cold, up your water intake. Dr. Christopher in America, he said, here's a sign to tell if you're drinking too much water. Put your head on the side, and if the water comes out your ears, in other words, it's almost impossible to drink too much water. The only time you could drink too much water is if you're not having those minerals. So as soon as you start drinking more water, you will start to lose a few more minerals. So it's very important to have the proper salt. My suggestion is about a teaspoon of salt in a day, over the day. If a person's not used to having salt, I say start small. Start small, just little by little, increase it. And your body will adapt to that. Just as it adapts to no salt, it will start to adapt to proper salt. Third most vital element needed for life. Water is an amazing substance. Water can be used for healing too. Hydrotherapy is a huge subject. I have whole books written on hydrotherapy, which is water therapy. And the steam sauna that our guests have at night or in late afternoon, where they go into the little steam hut for about 10-15 minutes and then have the cold shower, or if they're brave, they can run down to the creek and dive in the creek and then back in again. We're doing hot and colds. And by the third steam, the body temperature, the core body temperature, can sometimes be up to 40 degrees. And when the body gets up to 40 degrees, circulation, metabolism increases by 400%. That's quite remarkable, isn't it? So when circulation and metabolism increase 400%, that means healing is increasing by 400%. Elimination of waste is being boosted 400 times. So that's quite remarkable. Not everyone has a steam bath, but it also explains why this is such an important part of a detox program. As I told you earlier, up to 70% of body's waste can come out of the body when the body's given the right conditions, and that condition is that steam. The only time a person may not be able to handle the steam is if they go into the steam bath dehydrated. So very important the person be well hydrated when they go in. But I'd like to just give you some very simple treatments now that you can use in the home. I had a lady ring me up one day and she said, "Barbara, my 10-year-old has just trodden on a rusty nail and she's not vaccinated." I said, "Aha." She said, "We have your poultice DVD, and so we've put a grated potato poultice on the wound." I said, "Good, that's a good choice." She said to me, "But it's still a little bit swollen and it's still a little bit sore." I said, "Aha, well, you can go one step further. Get 2 buckets of water and make one very hot and put the child's foot in the hot water for 3 minutes. How hot? As hot as the child can stand. We don't want to burn the child. I always put a person's foot in my hand and I put my hand in the water, so my hand is filling the water. And if the person cannot take it, the only time you would not do it would be someone who has poor circulation, maybe the very old or the very young, someone who has diabetes and they can't feel their feet properly. That's the only time you would not do it. So 3 minutes hot water and then cold, and it's as cold as you can. Ideally put some ice cubes in that cold. And the cold is done for 30 seconds. So what's happening here is when the foot is put into hot water, we're warm-blooded creatures, so immediately the blood rushes to the area. And when the blood rushes to the area, fresh blood's coming in, and fresh blood is bringing more oxygen, more nutrients, more water, more white blood cell, and as it pushes the old out, it's throwing off the waste. Can you see that? Now, after 3 minutes, the blood starts to slow down, because that's what happens when we're in a hot bath, isn't it? We start to slow down to the point of sleep. And so you pull the foot out of the bucket and into the ice cold. Will that wake it up? Whoa. We are warm-blooded creatures, and whenever cold touches our body, there's a reaction. And basically, the body's going, "Whoa, cold, it has the potential to kill us. Quick, move fast." Can you see that's the reaction? Now, within 30 seconds, the reaction has died down and the blood can start slowing down. So we put it back in the hot and wake it up again. So whenever you do the hot, you have a kettle of boiling water there, and while the foot or the hand or whatever you're doing is in the cold, you heat up the hot with a bit of boiling water. Again, test it, test it. You do this whole thing 3 times, always starting with the hot and always finishing with the cold. You see, finishing with the cold equalises the circulation, closes pores, prevents chilling. The only time we've had someone faint in our steam bath is they had the steam and they didn't want to have the cold shower, so they went and stood in the cool air and then came back in. Cool air does not do what cold water does. It's the reaction of the cold water on the blood, and that doesn't happen with cold air. If someone says, well, I want to do the steam but not the cold, I say, well, I'm sorry, you can't do it. Because you'll be in trouble if you don't finish with that cold. It's only quick. It's only quick. So the lady did this to her little girl that had trodden on the rusty nail. 3 minutes in the hot, 30 seconds in the cold. 3 times. And then I said, put the grated potato on. I said, ring me in 2 hours. You see, if there's no response in 2 hours, what do I say? You go straight to hospital. I said, ring me in 2 hours. She rang me and she said, she's laughing, all her pain has gone, there is no redness at all around the foot. I said, good. My suggestion would be, with this girl, to do hot and colds maybe 3 times a day, and you probably only need to do the grated potato poultice overnight. I always say, watch the body's reaction, and if your body says yes, remember, you're the doctor. Are you getting relief? I'll tell you another story similar. I was in New Zealand and I was seeing a lady. She brought her 7-year-old boy in. He was just with her while she talked to me. And my eye immediately went to his finger. Now this finger, the joint was all swollen, it was red, and there was like a white pussy bit on top. I said, what's the matter with the finger? She said, well, the doctor says it's cellulitis. You know what cellulitis is? Inflammation of the cell. I said, yes, I can see that. But what am I asking now? Why? Because that wouldn't have happened for no reason. She said, oh, a few days ago, he had a blister on his finger and he was playing in the dirt and the blister broke. Are we starting to see what happens? Aha. I said, what have you been doing? It wasn't a few days ago, it was actually a few weeks ago, because she said he's on his 2nd course of antibiotics. He's having to take painkillers at night to sleep and sleeping tablets. So he's on 3 medication and he's 7. I said, do you mind if I try something? She said, not at all, not at all. Now I got the permission of the child. Always get the permission of the child, because a man convinced against his will be of the same opinion still. I always use the will. I said, can I do this? Can I just do the hot and colds? I told him what I was going to do. I explained it. He nodded. And I got 2 cups. He could not take the hot, so we made it a bit colder. He could not take it until he could bear it. When he could bear it, after 3 minutes, we put his finger in ice cold. While he's in there, we put hot in the little hot mug. And then I said, get your good finger and put your good finger in there so that your brain can assess that that's not that hot. Yes. And this time, his sore finger could bear the hot. He did it 3 times. By the end of it, a smile came to his face. In 15 minutes, we had reduced the pain by 50%. 15 minutes. What did we do? We just got fresh supplies of blood in, which took the old blood out. It's very simple. And then I grated a potato and I put it on his finger. His mother rang me the next day. She said, this is amazing. He woke up in the morning and said, can I do more hot and colds? See, he'd experienced the relief. She said, by the end of the next day, by the 2nd grated potato poultice, all the junk came out. He had no more pain. And if he does get pain, what does he do? Just goes back to this. She said, what will I do with the antibiotic? I said, I'll leave that up to you. I can tell you what I would do if you would like to ask. She was so excited. It's so simple, isn't it? It's incredibly simple. So water's not just a powerful thing to take into our body, we can use it externally to bring relief with simple ailments. And before I close, I'll just give you one last one, which every home should know this remedy. And this is a straight hot foot bath. And it's done for a headache. It's done for a headache. It's done for if someone's highly stressed. It's done if someone has a congested chest or problems in their abdomen. You see our head, our chest and our abdomen have a reflex in the feet. And often there's congestion of blood if there's a problem here or in the head. So you put your feet in hot water and basically the brain goes, whoa, the feet need help. Send extra blood down. So it takes the blood from the congested area. We have many guests come here that have headaches from caffeine withdrawals. So we're doing lots of hot foot baths. 20 minutes in the hot foot bath, maybe every 5 minutes another little bit of boiling water. When the hot foot bath finishes, they put their feet up and you pour cold water over their feet and then dry it. Very simple treatment. Very simple. If someone's stressed out, bad headache, congestion in these areas, that's called a straight hot foot bath. You'll never look at water the same again, will you? Celiac, gluten, irritable bowel syndrome, do they have any connection? What is celiac? What is gluten? Irritable bowel syndrome. Irritable bowel syndrome, the very name indicates what it is, which is irritation of the gastrointestinal tract. The gastrointestinal tract is a very interesting part of our body, and to understand what celiac is, to understand what the relation gluten has to it and irritable bowel syndrome, I want to begin this presentation by taking you on a journey through your gastrointestinal tract. It is a hollow tube. It is approximately 8 meters long. It is an external structure meaning anything that goes in there is not part of you or me until it gets broken down to tiny substances, then absorbed through the wall and into the blood, then it becomes part of you. The blood is often called the river of life. The Bible calls it the life of the flesh because the blood is the carrier. It's the carrier of nutrients all through the body. To the CBD, central business district of the human body, is the workings inside the cell. So let's have a look at the gastrointestinal tract. Let me define what I mean, first of all, by an external structure. This little coat that I have on now is not part of me, even though it is touching my skin. It will only become part of me if somehow it breaks down to tiny substances, gets absorbed through my pores into my blood, then it is part of me. And so the food that we eat, when it goes into our bodies, it does not become part of us until it gets broken down to tiny little substances absorbed into the blood, then it becomes part of you or me. So let's begin. The mouth. Do you know that's the only part of our gastrointestinal tract that we have say over? And we have say over what goes in. We have say over how long it's in there. We have say over how often it goes in there. So we have say over what goes in. We choose the food that goes into our bodies. And the food that goes into our body has a direct relation on whether we have or we don't have celiac, or whether we have or don't have irritable bowel syndrome. Gluten is one of those foods. I will be defining that later. In our mouth are teeth, and teeth chew up that food. I said we have say over what goes in, we have say over how long it is in there, meaning it should be in our mouth till that food is broken down almost to liquid. We've got a problem today. We've got a very fast society. People eat fast. People do everything fast. My husband eats fast. I'm always saying, slow down. Sometimes I touch his lips and smile, a little slower, a little slower. You see, there are no teeth in the stomach. And so it's very important that the food stay in our mouth and we chew it and chew it and chew it and chew it until we can just about drink it. You've probably heard the old saying, we should chew our drinks and drink our food. It's actually referring to, and I do mention this to our guests at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, when they take their juices, take a mouthful and swish it round in the mouth, or chew it, then swallow it. That allows time for the digestive enzymes to work in and around or through those little particles of juice, and then swallow it. And what do I mean by drink our food? We should chew it until it's just about a liquid, and then swallow it down. Oh, that makes the stomach very happy. It makes all the other functions of the gastrointestinal tract so much easier when we chew it. And that's why often in families you can have a little bit of a competition to see who can chew the most, even to put the knife and fork down between the meals, because children, especially when they're hungry and they love the food, they can be eating a little bit too fast. So we have say over what goes in, we have say over how long it is in the mouth. When we chew our food and break it down to tiny particles, it actually means there's a larger surface area for the enzymes to work on. Now the mouth is an alkaline environment. And the enzymes in the mouth are the ones that only work in an alkaline environment. And the main enzyme released in the mouth for digestion is an amylase called ptyalin. And ptyalin is the enzyme that breaks down starch. That's the only food, or the main food, that starts digestion in the mouth. You see, the stomach is an acid environment. And so as soon as the ptyalin and the starch reach the stomach, digestion starts to slow down of starch because it is now in an acid environment. There is one more food that does start its breakdown in the mouth, and that is saturated fats like coconut. It's a short or a medium chain fatty acid, and there are glands just underneath the tongue called sublingual glands, and they release lingual lipase. And lingual lipase is the enzyme that breaks down short and medium chain fatty acids. So we'll say, for short, saturated fat. That's the only breakdown that happens in the mouth. Now, the stomach is an acid environment. When the short-chain fatty acids and medium-chain fatty acids in the saturated fats, specifically I'm referring to coconut, when it comes into the stomach, the breakdown's already happened, so it just happily goes along with what's happening there. The starch digestion, which is all your starch foods, are things like pasta, things like breads, potatoes, cereals, cakes, biscuits. When they get to the stomach, because it is an acid environment, that digestion is slowed down. It is in the stomach that two enzymes are released: hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen. Hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen both unite together to release pepsin. And pepsin is what's often called an enzyme, a proteolytic enzyme. And a proteolytic enzyme is what breaks down protein. That is the only digestion that happens in the stomach. Most people are unaware of that. And that's the only part of the stomach that is acid. In fact, these two coming together can only happen in an acid environment. Pepsin can only work in an acid environment. That's why it is so important not to drink with our meals because that waters down that acid environment. We should be drinking half an hour before the meal and resume about an hour and a half, 2 hours after the meal. If you're thirsty, have a mouthful. One mouthful is not going to drastically change that acid environment, but the majority of our water should be drunk between meals. Protein is broken down in the stomach in a very acid environment. At the end of the stomach, there's a little gate called pyloric sphincter. And the pyloric sphincter, when we wake up in the morning, it is open. That's why the best thing to do in the morning is drink a glass of water, and the water will be a little bit absorbed here, but it'll come down here, and it's a lovely stimulant for starting the action of the intestines, the large and the small. But when you smell food, when your brain knows breakfast is coming, then pyloric sphincter shuts. All of these enzymes here are started to be released to create the proteolytic enzyme, which breaks down the protein. Everything's ready. Another reason why food should stay in the mouth a little longer is that it gives a message to the brain, oh, we've got a bit of starch here, oh, we've got a bit of fat here, there's a bit of protein come in, brain says thanks. And it gives a message to all the organs further down to get ready for the food that is coming. So everything is ready because the main function of this incredibly complex external structure is to break our food down right to the right state so it can go into our blood and then travel all through our body to the cell, which is why we see, why we hear, why our heart beats, why our whole body moves, why our brain thinks. So this whole system is designed just to get those tiny structures to feed every cell. As the protein gets broken down, pyloric sphincter begins to open little by little by little. Digestion in the stomach takes approximately 3 to 4 hours. By the time 4 hours is up, usually the stomach is empty. And then the body loves a rest. Specifically, the stomach loves a rest of 1 hour. In that 1 hour rest, it allows all the digestive enzymes to be replaced. The lining of the gut basically looks like this. The lining of the stomach looks like this, and there are glands all surrounding those big folds. 2/3 of those glands, the top 2/3, release mucus. And that mucus is important to protect the lining of the stomach from this proteolytic enzyme pepsin, which could start to break down our stomach wall. So we've got this thick mucosa lining. Down here, these digestive glands here, they are ones that are releasing the hydrochloric acid, the pepsinogen. They also release the intrinsic factor, which is required way down here at the bottom part of the small intestine for the absorption of vitamin B. So the proper handling of the stomach is vital so that all of these enzymes are replaced as they need to be replaced. If someone says to me, I've got a very acid stomach, I say, how do you know? They say to me, I can feel it. That doesn't mean you've got too much acid. That means your lining of the stomach is too thin and little holes can start to be eaten into that lining. Why would it be too thin? Well, mucus is 99% water. The main cause of too thin a lining in the stomach is dehydration. It's as simple as that. A glass of water half an hour before we eat will immediately thicken that mucosa wall. That's why it's a good time. Gather the family together, even 3/4 of an hour before the meal. Let's drink. So very important that the water be drunk. Very important that there be a gap between meals. And the only way you can have that gap between meals, and we have looked at this in our previous lectures, is to eat a food program that is very high in fibre, that has great amounts of vegetarian protein, and that has some healthy fats. I call them the FPFs. As the food gets broken down, pyloric sphincter opens, and little by little it comes through to the duodenum. This is the duodenum here. It's the first part of the small intestine. Duodenum is an alkaline environment. As an alkaline environment, then the rest of starch can start to happen. So when it comes into this alkaline environment, a few things are happening here. Here is the liver, there's our gallbladder, this is the bile duct. Can you see it comes down and it connects with the neck of the pancreas? This is pancreas here. What happens in the duodenum is bile from the gallbladder starts to break the fat down into tiny particles. So we've got fat. And it's broken down with the bile. So that comes from your liver. One lady said, what if you don't have a gallbladder? It is the liver that makes the bile, and the gallbladder really is just a reservoir for the bile. So if the bile hasn't got its reservoir anymore, then it really will just be made in the liver and then just put straight down. The body is an amazing organism in its ability to adapt. Quite phenomenal. So the bile from the liver starts to break down the fat here in the duodenum. Something else comes on now, and that is some enzymes from the pancreas. So the pancreas releases quite a few. So from the pancreas, we'll come over here because we've got quite a few. And this one might surprise you, sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarb is released from the pancreas to neutralise the stomach acid as it comes out, because the duodenum is an alkaline environment. So the sodium bicarbonate is released from the pancreas. That's not right, is it? I thought we had a problem there. That's better. From the pancreas to neutralise the stomach acid as it comes through, and to maintain or ensure that the duodenum is an alkaline environment. And then from the pancreas, we've got pancreatic lipase. We'll just put a P for pancreatic lipase. And the pancreatic lipase further breaks down the fat. We've also got pancreatic amylase. And amylase is the enzyme that breaks down starch. So can you see starch digestion is happening or begun in the mouth. It's put on hold in the stomach in that acid environment, and then it's revived again in the duodenum under the action of pancreatic amylase. That's where the final breakdown happens. The pancreas also releases trypsin. And trypsin and chymotrypsin are two proteolytic enzymes. And remember, the proteolytic enzymes are the ones that break down protein. Most people don't realise what an important role that the pancreas plays in digestion. The pancreas, when you look at this, is really the main organ of digestion. But the pancreas is going to have a tough job if the stomach doesn't do its work. The pancreas is going to have a tough job if the mouth has been unable to do its work. Can you see that? So one of the best things you can do for your pancreas is to make sure you chew your food well, make sure you don't drink with your meals, make sure you have a food program with good amounts of fibre, great proteins and fats, and don't drink with your meal. And that will make the life for the pancreas much easier, much easier. So let's just go over what pancreas does again. In fact, have a look at this. Number 1, sodium bicarb. Number 2, pancreatic lipase. Number 3, pancreatic amylase. Number 4, trypsin. And number 5, chymotrypsin. Sodium bicarbonate to neutralise the stomach acid, pancreatic lipase to finalise the fat, pancreatic amylase to help finalise the starch, trypsin and chymotrypsin to finalise that protein breakdown. So as you can see, by the time you're getting down into the probably second part of your small intestine, the majority of your digestion has happened. And then in this small intestine, and it's quite a few metres long, it is here we get the villi. These villi are lining this small intestine. And it's across the villi that you have the capillary network. And remember, anything that goes into that gastrointestinal tract is not part of you or me until it gets broken down to these tiny substances. With the fat, it's glycerol and fatty acids. And the glycerol and fatty acids, they don't go into the blood. The glycerol and fatty acids go straight into the lacteal, which is part of your lymphatic system. But as I defined earlier in the week when we looked at fats, the short-chain fatty acids that you find in saturated fats like coconut oil, because their breakdown starts in the mouth, they don't need the bile and they don't need the pancreatic lipase. So your bile and your pancreatic lipase are the ones that are working on the long-chain fatty acids. And it's the long-chain fatty acids that come into the lacteal. But the unique thing about coconut oil is the breakdown happens in the mouth. Well, it begins in the mouth and it continues all the way down the tract. And then it gets taken into the blood. The long-chain fatty acids, that doesn't happen to. So now we're at the point in the gastrointestinal tract where we've come to the area where it's the final finale, really, of digestion, which is coming through the brush border wall and into the blood, or as with the long-chain fatty acids, into the lacteal. Now, you'll notice that I have drawn a thick layer, and I've drawn it in green because it is like a jungle or a turf. One writer called it a jungle, another one called it a turf. And that thick turf is made up of Lactobacillus acidophilus and Bifidus bacterium. Lactobacillus acidophilus and Bifidus bacterium, some people say, can you speak English please? That's the name of our healthy or friendly bacteria, and they are the two permanent one, and all the others, you've probably read of many others, they actually are made from those two permanent ones. They line this gastrointestinal tract, and they are responsible for 3 main functions. One is breakdown. They are responsible for the final touch, so to speak, the final touch of breakdown. They are responsible for the absorption through and into the blood, but they are also responsible for protection. There's your border protection. Pretty important, aren't they? Every part of this gastrointestinal tract is vital. But I would have to say this is probably the most vital part, because this is the grand finale. This is now, finally, we're ready to go through the gates of the city and into the blood, the river of life that will now, this is the main function of the reason we eat. People don't know that. People think we eat because it tastes good. No, no, no. We eat to get nutrients, to get through to that blood, to go to the CBD. Remember, central business district of the body is the inside of the cell. But something's happening today which is causing a breakdown of your border protection. Let me explain. When we are in utero, we have no border protection. Babies have a sterile gut, so to speak. There is no border protection over it. And when they're born, they come through the birth canal. They are literally showered with the mother's microorganisms. One professor I was listening to, he said, I always thought God made a mistake to put the anus and the vagina so close together. He said, because what's coming out of the anus, you don't want anywhere near that baby. But he said, now we are discovering that it was no accident or mistake. It was carefully designed. Because when that birth canal stretches open and the head comes out, I gave birth to a 10-pound baby. They're big. When that birth canal stretches out, the anal sphincter also stretches, and microorganisms literally shower that baby in birth. And that's very important, because those microorganisms that shower the baby are responsible for building up in that baby's gut this important, essential gut flora, our border protection. And when the baby receives the colostrum, that thick milk in those first few days, you couldn't even call it milk, it would have to be cream. That also has microorganisms that help to line this gut. You've probably read of that colostrum, that's an important part on the baby's immune system in building up that proper gut flora. Because did you know that our immune system is established in our gut? The gut's a very important part of the body. Not often discussed, actually rarely discussed, until you come to Misty Mountain Health Retreat. People say, I'm talking about things I never talked about. What happens if a baby's born via caesarean section? Do you know they're showing now that babies born via caesarean section, their gut starts to build up with skin flora, not gut flora. And skin flora is fantastic for skin, but it actually doesn't work properly in the gut. And what if the baby's not breastfed? And what if the nurse walks past the baby with a sniffle? That baby catches it like that. Mothers should be told if they give birth to via caesarean section, they should paint the nipple every morning with a little probiotic. Probiotic means for life. It's Lactobacillus acidophilus bifidobacterium powder, just a little on the nipple. And if the mother cannot breastfeed, then the best milk really is goat's milk. Because the size of a goat, very similar to the size of a human. You look at a cow, they're as big as their mother within 1 year. And cows aren't very intelligent and they get very big and fat. So if you want a baby that's not very intelligent and gets big and fat early, give the baby cow's milk. Cow's milk's perfect milk for baby calves, full stop. That's about it. I can't think of any other reason. What happens if the mother has a compromised gut flora? Then the baby will be born with a compromised gut flora. The breast milk would contain compromised flora to give to that baby. What would compromise that gut flora? Antibiotics wipe out the gut flora. It was only 2 nights ago it had on the news. In fact, there was a section on the 7:30 report about this little boy who had nearly died. He was just given antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic for ear problems. But as I'll show you later, what we have to look at is why are the ear problems there, and there are certain foods that can create that. They nearly lost that little boy. That little boy at the age of 7 had literally become immune to antibiotics. Did you know that Australia has the highest user of antibiotics in the world today? That's what it said on the 7:30 report. Doctors have been asked to please reduce the antibiotics. We're going to go back to the old ways. Instead, when we get a cold, instead of going to the doctor for an antibiotic, even if we're coughing up yellow, we should have lemon and honey drinks. We should put our feet in hot water. We should go to bed for a day. We should exercise. We should eat lightly, if at all. We should have some hot and cold showers, go to the gym, have a steam bath, go into the cold. These are all the old remedies that boost your immune system. The body can heal itself. There was a newspaper article that said 100 people had the flu. 50 took antibiotics, 50 didn't, and they all got better. Did everyone hear that? Most people don't wait long enough, or they're not actually giving the body the right conditions so that it can heal. Antibiotics. I'm not against antibiotics. The human gut can cope with about 2 courses in a lifetime. Did you hear that? About 2 courses in a lifetime. It's the overuse. Contraceptive pill. There are alternatives to the contraceptive pill. Statin drugs. In another of my lecture, I showed you that cholesterol is not the problem, and we need to be cautious not to get cholesterol too low. Many drugs kill off the gut flora. And then as the gut flora is being killed off, the person has a high sugar diet, having alcohol every night. And as I'll look in a minute, the high sugar starch in wheat feeding the yeasts in the gut so that they get out of control. Now this gut flora plays another role other than breakdown, absorption and protection. They also play a role of nourishment. Who do they nourish? They nourish the cells that line this gastrointestinal tract. And they're remade every 3 to 5 days. So the cell is born down here in the valley. It takes 3 to 5 days for that cell to move up, and then it's taken away. We'll put wings on it. Flies away to the graveyard. It's dead now. Those cells, as they move up, are nourished by this gut flora. So when there is no gut flora, the cells are not nourished, and they are unable to play their role. So what happened is the final breakdown isn't able to happen properly. Absorption isn't happening properly. Protection against harmful microbes isn't happening. And the nourishment of those walls isn't happening. And this is one of the reasons why people with irritable bowel aren't healing, because they should heal in about 2 weeks. When you consider that these cells are remade every 3 to 5 days. Do you know, the problem might have started here, the problem might partially be here, the problem might partially be in the liver, it might partially be in the pancreas. There's a whole lot of things that if they're not working properly can affect this. But I think myself, one of the major problems is lack of proper gut flora. When I have finished my illustration of the gut, I'm going to show you how at every step it can be healed. And I'm also going to show you the role that gluten plays in all of this, which basically, celiac is a total intolerance to gluten. Let's move on. The majority, really all of absorption should have happened by the time we get to the ileum. That's the last part of the small intestine. And it is in the ileum that B12 is absorbed. Notice this little fellow here. That's your appendix. Does it have a use? It has a very important use. God didn't make a mistake. God never makes a mistake. Well, what's the appendix for? It's called the colon's oil can, because what it does, it releases an oily substance that helps to lubricate and move the food through the colon. It releases something else, an antibacterial fluid, and that antibacterial fluid is designed to negate toxic substance as it comes through. What would come through that was toxic? What would come through that was toxic was something that hadn't got its proper breakdown up here, so it's starting to rot. And if it's meat and animal products, it will be putrefying, which is pretty toxic, gives off ptomaine. Have you heard of ptomaine poisoning? It's a toxic gas that can kill you. And let's say on top of that, the person's had a Coke with their meal and ended with a ice cream with chocolate flavouring all over it. What happens with sugar on putrefaction? It just speeds it up. So some pretty nasty stuff in some people are coming through here. So the appendix is releasing antibacterial fluid to try and negate that, to keep you alive and not poisoned, to get it all through the large and out again, and hopefully quickly. Now we come to the large intestine. One of the main functions of the large intestine is to take water out, so stools can be formed and they can pass with ease. When a person's dehydrated, more water gets taken out than should be taken out, then we're left with cement and rabbit pellets. And so it's building up, especially in this area here. And then the person feels to go, but they're in a hurry and they've got no time. The bus is waiting and they're just putting the last bit of make it up. They haven't got time to go now. And so aren't we glad that God gave us an anal sphincter right here that we can actually hold? And we're glad, because sometimes the plane's landing and you just can't go. And there's not a problem with that. There's not a problem that the odd day you use it for that, or the odd day you don't. It's what you do every day that matters. And this is happening every morning. And the lady doesn't go. Why does she feel to go? Because the food comes down here and puts pressure on that anal sphincter, but she holds it tight. She gets on the bus, she gets to work, she goes to the toilet, nothing happens. Why? Because she didn't go, the body put that substance that it wanted to release back into this other part of the small intestine. And she can't go. And the longer it's there, guess what? The more water gets taken out. And now it's 5 days and she hasn't been, and she's still eating 3 times a day. Do you wonder where it all goes? It all builds up here and she says, I've got to go. So she sits and she strains. We should never strain. Because you know what happens when you strain? Something's got to give and out they pop. They're called hemorrhoids. Very nasty little things are these hemorrhoids. But there's always a reason. Why are they there? They're there because the colon is not running and evacuating as regularly as it should. Things are building up, pressure's put on it. There's a lot to be said for squatting. If everyone squatted, the colon could evacuate much easier and these little substances wouldn't be coming out. You can even buy little wooden things to go around your toilet so you can squat. And in many countries, especially in Africa and Asia, if you go to the toilet, you squat. It's actually much healthier for the body. But when people are overweight, it's very hard to squat. So can you see, at every step we can get problems all the way through here. And when there is no fibre, things slow down. Fibre is very important. Your highest fibre food is your vegetables. Vegetables with all their fibres sweep. They daily sweep all of these little grooves, especially these little corners up in here. But fibre not only sweeps every day, fibre also, because of its bulk, stimulates peristalsis, and this should ever be moving, ever be moving. Dr. Kellogg said 3 intakes of food a day should equal 3 evacuations. Not many people do that. The food that we eat should be out within 16 hours. And I'm afraid that doesn't often happen. It doesn't often happen because our bodies are creatures of habit, and people get into the habit of only going when it's comfortable to go. When we feel to go, we should promptly answer nature's immediate call. And if we don't, we should panic. Because colon cancer, hemorrhoids, they are not comfortable things. And if we look after that gut, things like that will never happen. We need to be drinking between meals to keep that body nice and hydrated so too much water doesn't come out. We need to be eating a high fibre diet so that that's moving every day. We need to ideally, as much as possible, squat when we evacuate. And we need to experience relaxation. One lady said, I can't stand it when my husband goes to the toilet, he takes a book. I said, you got to take a book. You got to relax. Because our emotions do affect the way the colon works. What I'd like to look at now is how we can heal. How we can get things moving in this gut. Notice the word movement. Movement as it should be. Movement is life. Any stagnation at any point in this gut is going to cause putrefaction and thus problems. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got to chew. As I mentioned earlier, we've got to have water between meals and not with meals. As I mentioned earlier, we need to be allowing this function to happen properly. But let me define first of all with the mouth, because it has a lot to do with it. Mouth, we have say over what goes in. We have say over how long it's in the mouth. We have say over the environment. And it's important to look at this because this is the only one we really have say over. And what we do here affects all the way down the tract. When I say environment, we should cast off care and anxious thought when we sit to dine. There should be no controversial subjects mentioned at the table. We had a situation at our table recently where we had a couple of people starting to talk about a political situation, and they were both from either side of the camp. And just in the middle of it, I said, look at that bird out there. Everyone laughed. That's all I had to do. We need to have peace, tranquility at the table. If ever a child at the table, when I had my children at home, if ever a child made a fuss at the table, I quickly picked them up and put them out on the veranda and shut the door. Don't ever allow that to happen at the table. No one can digest quickly if there's a problem. I don't want this food. Quick, up really quickly. Outside, shut the door. If it's a baby, quickly pick them up, put them in the cot, shut the door. Where do they want to be? At that table. Especially when you don't feed them between meals. Do you know, they quickly get the message. Very quickly get the message. So make sure the environment is there. We've looked at how long, what goes in. There is a food today that is going in many mouths, and it takes up a huge part of Aussie's diet. It's what's causing celiac. It's one of the biggest contributing factors to irritable bowel syndrome, and it is wheat. How many people had cereal and toast for breakfast, cakes, biscuits, mid-morning, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea? That's almost 100% wheat. Let me show you the wheat issue. This is the wheat, the original wheat. It's Enkhorn. An Enkhorn wheat had a very fragile structure, basically looked like this. And I've given an illustration of its gluten or protein structure. Very fragile. Fragile is important because if it's fragile, it can be easily broken down by grinding, by cooking, by chewing, by digestive enzymes, easily absorbed into the body. It is not sure when, maybe a few thousand years ago, Enkhorn did a wild cross, or a wild hybrid they call it, with a wild grass and came up with an Emma strain. And this Emma strain, still fragile, but not quite as fragile a structure. In the 1950s, Dr. Norman Bulag and his team of scientists hybridized the wheat. They wanted to create a wheat with a high yield to address the starvation issue in Mexico, in India, in Africa. And they came up with a hybridized wheat. They are very happy with this wheat. It was such a hit that it went worldwide in the 70s. And in the 90s, in Australia, every bread, every pasta, every cake, every biscuit, every cereal is made from this hybridized wheat. It produced a high yield, but because it produced a high yield, they had to make it a very short wheat. Now in the 50s, 60s, 70s, if you went out west, all the wheat was this high. Now it is all this high. It saved millions, apparently, from starvation. And Dr. Norman Bulag received a Nobel Prize for his hybridized wheat in 1969. Everyone loved this wheat. High yield, didn't grow as high, but what was never addressed was the effect on the gut of human beings. You see, this wheat has a very complex structure. Complex protein gluten structure, and it's almost only a cast iron gut that can break that one down. The person that can handle wheat today is someone with very strong hydrochloric acid. And some do have a strong hydrochloric acid. But many don't, and many don't because they drink with their meals, they're eating all through the day, which just exhausts their hydrochloric acid resources, and these glands that are releasing the hydrochloric acid and the pepsinogen are getting exhausted. I have never met someone with an over-acid stomach. Some say, well, I know it's acid because it keeps coming up. There's nothing wrong with the acid. The problem is it's actually a little dual gate there called the cardiac sphincter. There's a very good muscle there that should stop it coming up. So if it isn't stopping it coming up, the question should be asked why. The reason is most people eat their largest meal at the end of the day and then they go to bed. Let's have a look at what gravity is doing. This is stomach laying down in bed and it's full. So where's it starting to push? It's starting to push that sphincter, and night after night after night it weakens it. And that sphincter is a muscle and it looks like this. And when that muscle is relaxed, it's closed. And when it tightens, it opens. So can you see a large meal at night and someone who's highly stressed, their muscles tighten and their little cardiac sphincter opens and it comes up. Everyone that comes here with reflux or heartburn, which is often what it's called because it feels like heartburn with the acid coming up, goes home without it. Because we feed our guests breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, tea like a pauper, and if they are prone to it, we give them magnesium. We give them magnesium 4 times a day, which relaxes that cardiac sphincter and closes it. Very simple. We feed our guests breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen and tea like a pauper. Most people in Australia today eat breakfast like a pauper, lunch like a pauper, and the tea is the king and the queen together. No wonder we've got so much reflux. We don't need to kill that acid, we need that acid. We need to look at why the discomfort is there. Wheat has this very complex structure. So when the hydrochloric acid, the pepsinogen, the pepsin aren't working very well, it's hard to break it down. Yes, the starch is broken down here, but wheat has a protein or gluten structure, and that's the one that gets broken down in the stomach. And if the enzymes there aren't working, we're not going to have much of a breakdown. But let me give a little bit more of a picture of the wheat before I show you what happens as we go down. If you make this wheat bread into a sourdough bread, the sourdough is a culturing process that breaks down the protein or the gluten in the grain, and you get a simpler structure, but it's still more complex than it originally was. But you can get a grain today called spelt, and it's a wild or field hybrid of the emmer wheat. So it still retains that fragile structure. Another one is kamut. Kamut is also a wild or field hybrid of the emmer wheat, and it also contains that fragile structure. And if these flours are made into a sourdough bread, that brings it virtually back to the original Enkhuizen structure. Isn't that good news? So some people say, can you get the original wheat? You can in a form of spelt and kamut. So why the celiac? And by the way, a celiac, they can't even handle the spelt and the kamut. They need to go totally gluten-free. And let me show you what's happening with this hybridized wheat in the gut. As I've just showed you, stomach's not working, so the breakdown isn't happening effectively there. It comes all the way down to the section of the gut where the final breakdown, absorption, is going to take place. And that wheat breaks down to a substance called glutamorphine. And glutamorphine, as you can see, it's an opiate derivative. Now, if that glutamorphine, let me give, to make it easier, that's the gluto and that's the morphine. Now, if that glutamorphine comes here, where there's a nice gut flora, these cells, which are the happy cells because they're getting nourished by the gut flora, it breaks off the morphine aspect and just allows the gluto through. But if that glutamorphine comes to this section here, where the cells are very unhappy and can't function properly because they have no nourishment, they cannot knock off that morphine aspect, so the glutamorphine gets into the blood, taken to the brain, the opiate receptor sites on the brain pick it up. Can you see the importance of the gut flora? It plays that vital role of protection. But there's something else, and that is milk. Milk breaks down to caseomorphine. But it is true, there are some guts that can handle dairy. It's usually if there is a history of dairy, then that gut can handle dairy. There is a genetic thing that comes in here too, because some people say, isn't celiac genetic? You can inherit a weakness or a tendency in that area, but remember, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So caseomorphine, let's give it a picture. There's the morphine on the caseomorphine. Comes through here, the morphine again gets knocked off by the happy cells who are well nourished. But if it comes through here, this unhappy cell cannot knock off the morphine. And these caseomorphine and glutamorphine are getting into the blood, going to the brain, and the opiate receptor sites are picking it up. And that's why in the book Grain Brain he shows this very carefully. But Who goes into more detail in this is Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride in her book Gut and Psychology. She does a very good job at defining all of this. There's another book called Wheat Belly by Dr. William Davis. There's another book called Stop Autism Now by Dr. Bruce Fife. They are all talking about the gut, and they are all talking, some to greater and lesser degree, about the dangers of this hybridized wheat. Can you see we've got a combination here of not only the hybridized wheat, not only the hybridized wheat, but the overconsumption of the wheat, as in the diet I just related to you: cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea. But you've also got this generation who have had a lot of antibiotics. So babies are being born with a compromised gut flora. You see, there are a lot of little threads that come together to make a strong rope. And a strong man can try and break that rope, but he cannot. But a little tiny mouse that strong man could just stomp on and squash, it can come along and start eating those little bits of threads, and the rope that the strong man could not break, breaks. With everyone I meet, virtually without exception, it's a whole lot of little threads all coming together. Now that I've shown you this, now that I've established the effect that this is happening on the gut, and by the way, if border protection's been lost, these glutamorphines and caseomorphines are highly irritating, and they're highly irritating to this sad cell that cannot protect itself. It doesn't get nourishment, and it's lost its protection. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a list. I'm going to show you what one can do to conquer celiac and conquer irritable bowel. I could actually put a few more things in there. To conquer sinus problems, to conquer asthma problems, to conquer bronchitis, to conquer earaches, to conquer eczema, to conquer psoriasis, to conquer Crohn's disease, to conquer colitis, to conquer irritable bowel. There's one remedy. Number one, eliminate. And as he says in his book, the author claims in the book Grain Brain, of kids with autism getting 50% recovery by just stopping the wheat and the dairy. And it's very important to also stop refined sugar, because that sugar just feeds the harmful microbes, feeds the yeast in the gut. These must stop. A lady rang the other day with a 1-year-old with eczema. I said to her, "Does the baby eat?" She said, "Yes." I said, "The baby should have no starch till the baby has teeth." You see, the ptyalin in the mouth, remember I talked about ptyalin in the mouth breaking down starch? There's not there. It's not released until the molars are through. That's about 18 months of age. Baby should have no starch. What does baby eat? Milk. And a little bit of vegetable. And a little bit of fruit. That's when the little tastes happen. She said, "Well, I've mostly stopped." She said, what milk will I give the baby? I said, "Is the baby breastfed?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Well, there's no need for any other milk." But I said, "Do you eat wheat, dairy or sugar?" She said, "Oh, a little bit." I said, "You've got to stop it completely." She said, "That's very hard." I said, "Well, it's either stopping that or have the eczema." I said, "It's not forever. It's just for a period of time." It's not forever, it's just for a period of time. But this gut will not heal while these are touching it. Do you see that? You have to stop. If you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. They must be eliminated. There are so many other grains. You've got rice, you've got millet, you've got quinoa, you've got buckwheat, amaranth. There are so many grains. There's no need to have the wheat. Well, how can we not have dairy? People say, "What milk do you drink, Barbara?" I say, "I'm weaned. I don't drink milk. Milk's for babies." Okay? Mind you, we use a bit of coconut cream. What sugar do you use? I don't use much sugar. But if I do cook my husband an apple strudel, I use the spelt flour, I use maple syrup, I use grated apple. You can make delicious foods. They must be eliminated. Number 2, probiotic. A probiotic for life. You can buy probiotic powders that contain Lactobacillus acidophilus bifidus bacterium. They're to be taken 3/4 of an hour before you eat, and they will come down while that pyloric sphincter is open. They will come down and they will start to repopulate the bottom part of your gut. Number 3, there are 2 herbs that coat, soothe and heal that gut. One is aloe vera and the other one is slippery elm. Slippery elm is the powdered bark of the slippery elm tree. They're both a bit gooey, aren't they? And they should be gooey because we need some nice goo to line this gut. Remember in Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says God gave herbs for the service of man. That's what they do. They come in and serve you. Not necessary to take both of them at once. You might do a week on this one and a week on that one. For someone who is severe, I suggest before every meal and just before bed. You can peel the aloe vera plant, mash it up or chew it up and swallow it. Or you can buy the slippery elm powder, put a teaspoon in about a cup of warm water, mix it well, drink it immediately, because if you don't, it'll get very thick and you'll be eating it with a spoon. One of our guests said, I prefer to eat it with a spoon. I'll leave it up to you. Number 4, water between. No water with meals, water between. Approximately 2 to 2.5 litres every day. Number 5, breakfast like a king. Lunch like a queen. And tea like a pauper. When your body goes to bed, your gut wants to sleep. And if you go to bed with a full stomach, your gut cannot sleep. If it does go to sleep, you'll die of ptomaine poisoning because all the food will rot. Tea like a pauper. And sometimes paupers don't eat. You don't fuel your car up at the end of the journey, you fuel it up at the beginning of the journey. Number 6, very important to exercise. Exercise, and this will get stronger as you use it. It's called self-control. Got that? And exercise the body. Very important that the body move every day. Exercise gently massages all these internal organs. Exercise increases the blood supply to all these internal organs. And very important to experience peace. In a highly stressed environment, it affects your digestion, it affects your liver, it affects your pancreas, it affects your whole gut. When I gave my heart to God at 25, I found peace. You can find him in the Bible. He is the author of this amazing body. The amazing body with the ability to heal. As we close, let me just give you a story of Zach, our cook. He was severe celiac. He could not handle it at all. He knew straight away because he'd want to fall asleep all day. That's another symptom, brain fog. I knew when he'd been eating gluten because I'd be talking to him and he'd be yawning, and he's 18 and he's yawning at 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, did you go to bed late? No. I said, have you been eating gluten? He'd go. He stopped all gluten. He did this, totally stopped. He didn't do this because his gut wasn't irritated, but he did everything else. With irritable bowel, that's essential. With celiac, it's only really important to do that if your gut is irritated. About a year later, I was at a function with Zach, and he got a slice of bread. I said, "Can you eat that?" He said, "Today, but not tomorrow, or the next day, or the next day, actually not for a month." How nice. He had conquered his celiac, and he'd actually brought it down to just really a bit of gluten sensitivity. He said, "If I have it 2 days in a row, I'm yawning all day, I'm falling asleep all day, my brain's foggy." You see, there are so many different symptoms. In fact, I challenge everyone, stop wheat for 2 months. Why 2 months? You can eat it, it'll go through your body, but the effects of that wheat can still be hanging around in your body for sometimes up to 6 weeks. So you need to do it for a good 2 months to really see the effect. As I said previously, some can handle spelt, some can't. The fine-tuning is yours. Everyone carries around in themselves their own doctor. Your doctor is within you. So my challenge to you is this, try it. You've got nothing to lose and possibly everything to gain.